All right, folks, it's another edition of the online dinner party. And of course, we've got some great and amazing guests that will be joining us today on a Wednesday, the day before Thanksgiving. So, a lot of folks are preparing for their regular Thanksgiving dinner. I know that yours truly will be going up to his mom's house and having a good old Thanksgiving meal at that location in Rocky Mount. I know a lot of folks are also concerned about the fact that they're not able to have as big a gathering as they usually would have had, because I know a lot of folks have definitely been planning to have those big family gatherings of maybe 20 or 30 or 40 people, and maybe a little bit less than that. But definitely those big gatherings are not being encouraged. But we are definitely still going to go up to Rocky Mount and spend some time with mom as well as time with my brother and my two nephews. And I've also learned that they've got a big giant furry dog that's only 5 months old, and it's already starting to swallow up the nephews and everything in terms of its size and its fur and all of that. So it'll be interesting to see how that travel to Rocky Mount goes with that big dog that's only 5 months old, and it definitely probably got way more energy than yours truly. But we'll find out how that all works out on the trip there. Fortunately, it's only about an hour, maybe a little bit over an hour to get up the Rocky Mount from the Durham, North Carolina area. So that's one of the things that is going on here in this area. And of course, we've got some great guests. And like I said, a lot of folks are paying attention to a number of things that are happening in our community and around our world. Like folks are trying to figure out how the transition is going. And I understand that some cabinet members have been appointed as of yesterday. We may be hearing of some more in the next several days for the Biden administration. And of course, we still got that person in 1600 that wants to be stubborn and doesn't want to leave office. But that's just my opinion on what he seems to be doing. But that's what's going on here. And of course, we are hearing talk of the vaccine, and a lot of folks are going to be curious to see how that works out and whether it is successful or not successful, and how soon we can get back to a semblance of normality. And of course, a lot of us are still struggling with our personal finances, and of course, the economy is a very important issue. That is what is going on in the world. So, and of course, folks are still paying attention to sports, even though it might be a new era of sports, the way that it is played and all of that. But definitely, folks have paid attention to what's going on. And I know that the NFL is heading into in the next several weeks and everything to start heading into postseason. We'll see how that plays out and what goes on in that regard. So that's just some of the things that are happening in our community and around our community. I know that here in North Carolina, I just stepped outside and it was starting to look a little bit on the cloudy side. So we may be getting some rain here in the not too distant future. But I've got a couple of great and amazing guests that I'm looking forward to bringing into the conversation. So, and I might have some others joining us later on. But I did want to first bring in Richard Mensati and everything. So definitely looking forward to that and everything. So Richard Mensah, and also he is part of LSX. And then I'm also be bringing in Sam Griffin later on. But I'm curious to find out as to how LSX came about. They do a lot of work in terms of onboarding a lot of different startups and things of that nature. One of the things we do here on our Wednesday programming on IBM TV is we talk to a lot of startups. And sometimes one of the things that they sometimes get frustrated with on Startup Wednesday is that they don't always show up. But one of the things that I can say for Richard and his crew is that if they get lined up for an interview, they are right there, because I've had the pleasure of interviewing several of them, some from California, some from the East Coast, and some from other parts of our great nation as well, because they have definitely been on my regular podcast, which is Straight Talk with Dean and Mark. And then they've also appeared on occasion on some of the things that we do here as well. So definitely great to see you here, Richard. And if you'll share a little bit about what LSX is all about. Like I said, I know that y'all do a lot
Yeah,
of great work with the startup communities, but the folks here at IBM TV may not know as much of what LSX is all about. So I know that they would love to hear what you've got going on and what the whole platform is about.
yeah. Thank you, Mark. So LSX, right, is a platform that we created to help, companies connect directly with media and event organizers. So think of it like we are trying to help companies increase their brand awareness without actively, going for so many more networking events or like sending so many emails, whether it's podcasters or writers. We're trying to make it as simple as just 2 clicks. They can reach out to the best of media and event organizers to get their stories out, to get more people to know about what they're working on. I mean, so far we have about 80 companies on the platform. I mean, some of them from Y Combinator, some from Techstars, who've been using that platform for a while now. And we've worked with event organizers from Harvard to MIT, and we have a lot of really amazing partnerships, I mean, coming up in the next few months to help companies connect directly and, I mean, get their word out faster and easier on our platform. So we've been at this for about a year now, and we're really enjoying the whole thing so far. Yeah.
Oh, that sounds really great, and y'all are doing some great work in terms of creating that platform and everything. Tell a little bit about how your own business background, and how you even got connected with LSX. Like I said, I know that I first heard about y'all through your business partner Leah and everybody, but I was curious to know if you could share with us a little bit about how the whole platform came about and what the goals were when you first came about, and some of the ways that the goals are changing.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. So before we even started, right? I mean, I had a background in computer science. I mean, from originally from Ghana, and during my time in college, I actually like co-founded a number of companies, right? So I did, I mean, Origama Technologies, HireSale, and MeNotice, and those companies were pretty much in the media, ad tech, and HR industries. And one thing that I cut across was that, I mean, once you have a really good product or service, it gets to a point where, like, I mean, you need to scale it beyond your own network. You need to scale it beyond the people you know, and that's really hard if you don't really have that network already. I mean, finding people who are going to be like big fans of what you're working on, so they can spread the word, was really hard. So, what happened once we started LSX was that, I mean, I met Leah in Boston during an event, and I mean, I resonated with the problem, right? Because I had been through that a number of times, and Leah too had been working on a nonprofit, I mean, Ellis Project, that was helping immigrant founders, I mean, get their word out about, I mean, what they were working on. And so once we met each other, we felt like, I mean, a match made in heaven, and we just felt like, okay, so we have to actually solve this for all the other startups out there who are actually looking to scale beyond their own personal networks. I mean, some of them may not even have these networks, right? So how do we help these guys? How do we give them a platform, a very affordable platform to be able to reach, I mean, highly relevant audiences to whatever they're working on. So for example, if there's a startup working in blockchain or wellness, and he wants to reach like a podcaster who is primarily focused on wellness, or he wants to speak at an event that's primarily focused on wellness, we want to be the platform that they come to be able to just, I mean, send out a request in just 2 clicks without having to, I mean, wonder who they could talk to, who could give them an intro to the right person, and so many different steps that are necessary before you finally get in front of the right audience. So yeah, we've been at this so far, and I mean, we're seeing really good successes. And I mean, the goal for us is to actually scale those successes to the point where like innovators anywhere, I mean, in the US, around the world, who are actually on our platform can actually use it to be able to connect with audiences who, I mean, jump at their product or their service that you're working on. Yeah.
Gotcha. And who are some of the, like I said, I know that I've talked to a couple of them, everybody from a photography company to somebody that was doing some stuff in that kind of like high tech field to a number of others. But if you would share some of your stories of some of the clients that you're working with, I'm sure that our listeners would love to know some of the people that are already using the services, as well as some of the kind of businesses that you would like to be using the service.
Yeah, I mean, as for the kind of businesses that are actually using the service right now, I mean, they're very big, diverse set of companies. I mean, we have some from electric cars to wellness to, I mean, healthcare to VR. I mean, it's a very broad set. For example, we had, I mean, a customer who's working in like the fashion retail industry, and she's pretty much using AI to sort of like design clothing, right? So currently, how clothing design works is, I mean, you have a human behind everything to design your body shape, body size, and design something for you. But what she does is she pretty much uses AI. So you pretty much describe who you are, and they use AI to create the perfect clothing for you automatically using an algorithm. And I mean, she's part of the Techstars team, and I mean, so far she's been with us for like almost about a year now, and she's really enjoying the whole platform and helping. I mean, since we're helping her connect with a number of opportunities. With her in particular, we actually were able to secure a speaking engagement in like the Harvard Women in Business conference, right? So she came on the platform, and we connected her directly to, I mean, Harvard was using our platform to recruit speakers at the time, and she had the opportunity to be on the stage in Harvard, which she was super looking forward to, because she hadn't really been there before, but she was able to now share more about what she was working on and get connected to people who, I think she's actually working on a partnership with one of the people she met at that conference. So, I mean, there's so many good success stories over there. As to what the kind of people who want to be using analytics.
Yeah,
Yeah,
go ahead.
as the kind of people we want to be using LSX, I mean, primarily we're open to like most like technology companies, right? So even not tech-enabled companies. So any company that is looking to get the word out about what they're working on, that is working on something really interesting, we want to have that, because what we're seeing is that, I mean, media folks and event organizers, I mean, love a direct. They love to have very diverse set of people, and we are looking for a diverse set of companies to come join us on the platform. Right now we have like a sort of like a focus on e-commerce businesses, because we know that that's the future, because most of these, I mean, brick and mortar stores are actually getting disrupted because of COVID, and I mean, most of them are moving online. So we want to help promote more e-commerce companies to be able to, I mean, get the word out about what they're working on and help them create that brand that is going to resonate with people who buy their products and services.
Yeah, definitely. And it sounds like y'all are doing some great jobs, and I definitely want to continue the conversation. But I also want to bring in another one of our guests who is San Griffin. San Griffin has definitely been doing a lot around personal branding and all of that. So she has definitely been involved in a lot of great things. I actually met her some time back when she was working with the Tabrin modeling agency and things of that nature, and had done some shows at the Hayti Heritage Center. But she has definitely been involved in a lot of great things here in our local community. So I would love for San to share a little bit about what she's doing, and who knows, she might even be leading the LSX brand in terms of like getting out there to other folks as well. So San, I would love for you to share a little bit about what you're doing, and definitely what things that you are currently got going on, because you are such a entrepreneurial type woman that you've been involved in a number of great things throughout your career. And like I said, I know that we had the pleasure of having you on the Black Business Expo a while back, a couple of weeks ago, and you gave that very dynamic speech and everything. So love to hear you share a little bit about yourself as well.
Awesome, awesome. Well, thank you, Mark, for having me on your show, your radio show, TV show today. And hi, Richard. It's a pleasure to meet you
Hi,
virtually.
Sam. Yep.
Yes. Well, just a little bit more about me. My name is Sam Griffin. I'm the CEO of Aggrandize Your Life, which is my brand, and the goal is to produce transformative literature and workshops, like the one you mentioned. I did for the Black Expo last week, and my sub brand is Black Hair Love, which is in the same vein of producing transformative literature. I wanted to rebrand Black hair, how we think about Black hair, look at Black hair, and share stories with our children about Black hair. So I launched Black Hair Love this June, and it was the number one new release on Amazon. And I tell you, it's in Barbados, it's in Canada, it's going nationwide, which is what I put on my vision board. Mark, I was talking about vision boards last
Yeah.
week. So thank you so much for allowing me to share, my journey here about Black Hair Love.
Yeah, definitely. And if you would share a little bit about how important vision boards are, because you are definitely a big proponent of vision boards. And I think that Richard and his team have also used vision boards as well. So I'd love to hear both of you share kind of your thoughts as to the importance of vision boards as you're trying to develop whatever the business is, whether it's LSX or whether it's your brand, Sands. I know that that is something that I think not enough entrepreneurs do. Because like I said, I'm oftentimes amazed at the fact, and I was curious if you would say the same thing, Richard, that a lot of times folks have these great ideas of what they want to do in their businesses and everything, but they don't have a vision board, they don't have a business
Mhm.
plan, and sometimes they wonder why they're not succeeding. So I guess I'll defer to the lady first, and she's got the thing on the vision board, but I'll let San talk about the vision board, but then I would like to hear Richard's thoughts about what San says as well.
Awesome. Yes. Well, I'm a proponent for vision boards. Like I said, it is a tool to help manifest your goals and keep you focused. And studying under a neuroscientist, I learned the power of images and words. And a large majority of our brain is dedicated to interpreting images. We think in pictures. Like I said, if I said I have a candy apple red Mercedes, you saw that. You didn't see the words CANDYRED, right? Unless you are really special, you're touched. But so we think in pictures. And once again, with that knowledge, I took Black Hair Love and created imagery that was beautiful, words that are normally negative and that you've internalized. I intentionally use positive words, beautiful, strong hair instead of nappy hair or rude. You name it, they align black hair with a negative word. Afros, or what's the word they use? if you're trying to evoke a revolution or things of that nature, but it's who we are. So in the book, I use words that are positive, that are loving, that are strong and represent our ancestors. And once again, I wanted to share this with you and give them a tool to affirm that they are beautiful, they are special, and their hair is beautiful and unique just the way they are.
No, no doubt about that. Richard, I'd love to hear your thoughts on definitely the concept of vision boards, but I also agree with something that Sam says that too often, and I would even argue this is in our entrepreneurship world as well, we give these negative views of some of our minority entrepreneurs, and therefore they come in with a negative attitude already because they don't think that they can succeed. Whereas I noticed that a number of the folks on LSX, not all of them, but a number of them do come
Hmm.
from our minority community. So I'd love if you can
Yeah.
address the vision board aspect as well as the kind of like developing positive thoughts for our minorities of both of all ages, not just youth but all ages.
Yeah. I mean, particularly with the vision board, right? I mean, the way I see vision boards is you have to have a destination. You can't just like start something and not know what you want to accomplish with it. So, I mean, for us at LSX, we have a goal of what we want to see the world look like in the next 5 to 10 years. And that's what we're aiming and working towards. We have images, we have, I mean, descriptions and stuff like that. But I mean, the goal is what is going to wake you up, I mean, every single day? Why are you going to be excited to be working? And I mean, once you have a vision or a goal that you have in mind that it really means a lot to you, you're going to pursue that irrespective of whatever, I mean, challenges you might see, because of the fact that, I mean, entrepreneurship is really hard and it's not for like the faint-hearted, right? Because you could start it and within a year or something is not going right and you just decide to not do it anymore. But once you have that vision that you think that is going to be of value to you or is going to make an impact in society, that you really want to make that happen, you're just going to go straight and just keep going through all the pain and all the excitement and finally get to the point where you're super excited about where you've come because of that vision you already said like 5 years ago or like 3 years ago, depending on how long it's been there for. Particularly for LSX and what we've been working on, the goal there is to expand voices across board, right? Because what we're seeing is there's this, particularly within tech, right? It's quite hard for people who are minorities or, I mean, females, or I mean, to be able to break through the noise and actually get their word out or the voice out about what they're working on. And so that's why we started a company, to make it easier and make it pretty much level the playing field for companies, irrespective of where the founders may be from or the team may be from. We want to give them access to opportunities to, I mean, for more people to hear about what they're doing. For example, like if you come on our platform and you get to speak on like a Harvard event, for example, with the example I mentioned earlier, I mean, we actually really happy when we're able to make sure that like someone who would otherwise not have had the opportunity to do this is now having the opportunity to do this because they are on our platform. And the way I think about it, I mean, if you think about it from a global perspective or even a nationwide perspective, I mean, what is it going to mean when, I mean, more people around the world or more people within the country are hearing about, I mean, entrepreneurs who are not like just like plain white and stuff like that, but then they're from all around different races, whether it's Latino, it's women, it's, I mean, people of color, it's I mean, straight or gay, whatever it is, but to be able to give people access to all those opportunities is what we're working on. And we've been doing that for quite a while now. And I think that's what really drives us to the point that, okay, we're creating a future that entrepreneurship is not really based on a certain archetype kind of person, but anybody could be an entrepreneur, be celebrated as an entrepreneur, and I mean, make an impact in what their societies through entrepreneurship.
Yeah, definitely, I can agree with that. And Sam, I'd love to hear more about your thoughts about the whole line that you created in terms of the hair product and the hair book and everything. Because I do agree that too often we get caught up in the stereotypes of hair and thinking those negative images. So I was wondering if you could share some of your personal stories as to why you decided to create this whole book line and everything, and why you decided to do the work that you're doing. Because I'm thinking a lot of it has to do with your own history, both as a African American woman, but also the ways that you've risen your own kids. Because I know you have young people as well in your life.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yes, I like to start with a quote by the late great Toni Morrison. She said, "If you don't see the book that you would like to read, then you should write it." And I didn't see a book I want my children to read, my niece to read, that represented her, and my future grandchildren. And so that really just struck a nerve in me because, like you said, growing up, African American woman, uh, you've always had that conversation: good hair, bad hair. Oh, she have good hair, or this one have bad hair. And I have three sons, and all three of them have different texture hair. And my middle son always came home talking about when he was in elementary school. The girls say I have good hair. And then my other son, the younger one, he never got those comments. His hair was just a little tighter, stronger. And what I tell them, and I used to tell them, listen, it's all beautiful hair. It's all beautiful hair. I said, ask anybody who don't have hair on a cold day. They would love to have your hair. God's bless you if they got to go out and buy a hat. And so, I would say little things like that just to, have fun with the youth and my children. And I wanted a tool that affirmed what I said. I wanted a tool to affirm when they go to school or when they go to the library. I want them to see a book that said, your hair is beautiful just the way it is. Your hair is strong like your ancestors. Your hair is big like your loving heart. Your hair, all these wonderful things. So it's not only about the images, but I use my love of transformative words, words that impact their psyche, words that will carry them on, and they can tell their children and their children's children. Because what I realize is we've been perpetuating something that started by people who didn't love us. That good hair, bad hair started. I found in literature written in the 1600s where they separated the slaves, the mulatto slaves versus the black slaves that weren't raped by their slave masters, and so they would have good hair, bad hair, and they did that to also create division. So that has been perpetuated, and we are in the age of technology, and I was just thinking we need to write our stories. We need to tell the story about our hair, our culture, what we love about ourselves, and not wait for someone else to do that for us and keep perpetuating the lie. So that's what Black Hair Love is all about. And I have a book for all ages. This is the preschool book, which is this young guy is my stylist son. And when I was doing my research, I did not see books, especially in preschool, with a Black male on them. So I intentionally put Black males on the cover of each book because they need to see themselves in literature and know that they are beautiful. And this is a picture of my son, Mitchell, the one who never really got the comments about his hair was good. But the true story is I would see him walking around in the house and I would look at him and I say, wow, it looks like a crown oozing out of your pores. So if you can see it, his hair is going straight up and the jagged edge like a crown. I said, wow, look at God. And so I wanted people to see what I see. So when I designed the cover, I asked them to create a halo crown. So, watching media and things of that nature, a lot of times when we see our young Black males, it seems like there's, pitchfork and devil ears around their head. And I was like, I want people to see what I see. I see royalty. I see beauty. I see a crown oozing out. God wanted to know we were so special, want us to know we were so special. He have a crown oozing out your pores. So yes, I was intentional about the cover. And this right here, the artist out of South Carolina, her name is Igia Charles. She created this artwork before, around the same time I was writing my poems. And we just so happened to collaborate. And they just married so well. But when I looked at this picture, it's called Black Boy Joy. I said, these are the guys I grew up with. They were always just laughing, having fun, joking. And so, yeah, so I decided to put that on the cover. And when I see our hair, I feel like it is a flower. Our hair goes straight up to the sun. How beautiful is that? How unique is that? Like God's wonderful plants and his trees, everything that's alive and growing and thriving, right? So all that is in my literature. It's transformative literature. Once you read my book, you will not look at hair the same.
Sounds great. Richard, I was just wondering, because as you was talking, a couple of ideas and thoughts were crossing my mind and everything, but I was wondering, do y'all see those same kind of issues in your homeland? Because like I said, you are from Barbados and everything, so I was wondering, did you face some of those same kind of issues and everything in your homeland in terms of growing up that we have faced here in the United States with the way that hair is portrayed and all things of that nature? And then the other thing that I was curious about is a lot of times we hear of people talking about the racism and the other things that exist here in the Southeast, where me and San are based at. But we also know that Boston, where you are, also has a little bit of history of that as
Mm.
well. So I was wondering if you had to deal with that, even being in Boston and being in the tech field, because Boston has also had a little bit of history in terms of its race relations, even though it's a northeastern state and everything.
Yeah, but I think I have to do a bit of correction. I'm actually from Ghana, not
Ghana,
Barbados.
man. Right.
Yeah, but again, in Ghana, we don't really have we don't really have any issues, particularly with like hair and racism and things like that. I mean, Ghanaians are actually known to be extremely friendly, right? So once anyone foreign comes to the country, I mean, irrespective of whatever skin color, they're really nice and they try to like make you feel at home and they make you feel homey and they're trying to get like food and everything just so I can feel what the culture looks like. Um, but yeah, that's what it's like in Ghana. We don't really have any issues per se with, I mean, different sex. We have different ethnicities though in Ghana, so we have different tribes and stuff like that. And it's not really like a tension that exists, but it's just that I mean, you have some tribes that always think that okay, I'm better than these guys, and these people think I'm better than these guys. But it's not to the point where like that is not going to be a reason for you to not get like a job or get an investment or get hired by someone. It's just for fun, I think, and I mean, not too like not too crazy basically. In the US comparatively, and particularly in Boston, I think Boston has had a reputation for being one of like the most racist cities in the whole US that I know about. I actually worked on a project, I mean, during my time in my master's program, and what we're supposed to do was sort of like close the racial wealth gap within the Boston area, I think by 2.9 billion within the next 5 years, because what we identified was that there's a wealth gap that actually keeps, I mean, people who are not, I mean, who happen to be from minority communities from getting access to more wealth. And I mean, it's actually compounding and increasing, right? So, I mean, as more people grow up, because of historical, I mean, structures that existed, it's actually preventing them from actually getting access to finance or capital or anything to either start businesses or like improve their quality of life. So, I mean, what we came up with was we created a platform, like a solution that helped small businesses in Boston tap into the student population within the area to be able to get like student consultants coming into their business to help them out with like whether it's marketing or finance strategy, just to help them get the word out. So it's a nonprofit we worked with, and I think they are actually rolling that out right now and trying to make a difference in the Boston area. For me particularly, yeah, I've encountered a few of those kind of like things. I mean, just by the way that people look at you, right? Somebody can just tell you don't even have to say anything. You just have to just look at the way they're looking at you to know that they don't see you as equals, or they don't see you the same. And I mean, me, I don't really take that personally because I know, I mean, they don't really know what they're doing. It's pretty much what they are programmed to do, or they think that's the right thing for them to do.
Yeah.
But all I can do is be myself and show them that whatever you've been taught or whatever you knew or whatever your upbringing was, I mean, by my example, you can change your mind and actually be an evangelist and go out there and help people fight these biases that exist in society too. So I'll just try and do my best to make sure that everything I'm doing is going against everything you're thinking because of that bias you exist, and that is going to result in you changing your mind, hopefully, to be able to tell other people about the fact that, I mean, what I was taught may not be actually true because of the fact that I met this guy and he's very opposite. And I mean, it means that there are so many of them that are out there who are actually quite really good people. So yeah.
Yeah, no doubt. And Sam, one of the things I was going to mention to you and everything is you're also part of a very active entrepreneurship community here in the Triangle area and everything. So I'm thinking that even some of the entrepreneurs that you are part of with Everything Black and some of the other organizations that you are affiliated with could probably even use Richard's services, because they do try to connect business entrepreneurs to media outlets and things of that nature. So if you want to share a little bit about the kind of family and the kind of ecosystem, for lack of a better term, that exists here in the Triangle within our minority community. Because I am seeing like almost like new Black Wall Streets popping up around Durham and Raleigh and even down to Charlotte. And I know that you're part of that community. So I'm sure that Richard would love to hear a little bit more about that community and how it's growing and developing here in the Triangle area. Because I don't know that they have enough of their clientele here in the Southeast as of yet.
Okay, great. Yes, I am a member of the Every Dot Black. That's Every Dot Black. And you can Google that, and a lot of information will come up. The owner is Jimmy Davies. I've been a member since 2016. And I love being a part of movers and shakers and uh, creative people and people that are on the cutting edge and use technology to level the playing field like they do, because they keep me inspired, they keep me challenged. And I actually started a podcast called the Young Entrepreneurs Under Pressure with Every Dot Black. They train you on how to start your podcast and also create a platform. They have a platform where they promote and market your podcast. Also, Jimmy Davies has a Black directory where he has entrepreneurs from all over. Actually, they're national now because we have the mastermind meetings every Monday via Zoom. So you could be anywhere in the world and just log on. And I met a couple people this Monday. We had Griff, who is a radio personality with on 103.9 Delight. He was on there, and I met people from Texas, Boston. They have people on from Barbados. So you can meet people and share what you do. At the end of each mastermind meeting, they have a networking breakout rooms where you can introduce yourself and share contact information. So it's definitely a great organization to be a part of, to network and provide a platform to share whatever your expertise is, and to get others to come on board to your organization.
Sounds great. And one of the things I'd love to hear from both you, Richard, and you, Sam, but I'll start with Richard this time, is what do you think is one of the biggest myths that entrepreneurs have in terms of the ways that they should get started? I mentioned those that don't have business plans and some of the other things, but that's just one of the things that I think that entrepreneurs do when they are not prepared. So when you're talking to the entrepreneurs, even those that you might be onboarding for LSX, what are some of the things that you have to warn them about, and some of the things that you have learned that you wish that they would bring into the fold before they even came to you and everything? So I'd love to hear some of your perceptions of things that you would like to see entrepreneurs do a better job of. And then I'm going to turn that to San as well after hearing your answer, because like she said, she's working with some young entrepreneurs. So I know a lot of times they don't always have their game face on either. But I'd love to hear your thoughts first, Richard.
Yeah, I think, I mean, for us, one of the things we've seen is that most entrepreneurs have not really thought about the why behind what they're doing, right? Because ultimately what we're creating is creating a platform so you can keep selling the why on whether it's media or podcasts or newsletters, connecting with these people. They need to know the why behind what you're working on. And we're seeing that most people don't really have that like down. They come on our platform, we have a couple of questions that you have to answer to be able to pull out the why out of you. And most people find it difficult because they haven't really sat down to think about why you're working on. Particularly with entrepreneurship and starting like a company, what I think should be a startup point is not really about, I mean, you could have a really good business plan, right? But what you should understand is entrepreneurship is like a journey. It's like a really, really long journey, like a marathon. You don't really like expect to start and expect like 10 million people on your website and everything going like in the right direction. So what they should come in with them, like they should come in with a thought that, I mean, this could work. And if it works, that's going to make a difference. But if it's not, what I'm doing currently is not working, I'm going to be able to learn and adapt my strategies in order to find exactly what is going to work and to be able to like make a difference that way. I think most people sometimes come in and they just feel like, okay, so this, I tried it for like 2 weeks, it's not working, so it means everything is not working. And I'm like, 2 weeks, what can you figure out in 2 weeks? That's like super short time. So you need to expand the the horizon. Always have the vision in mind. I mean, what you want to achieve by the end of the 5-10 years time. But then you should be able to be flexible about how you get to that point, because I mean, along the way, everything is going to be different. I mean, who could have predicted COVID, right? You couldn't have predicted that. And once such a thing happened, you should be able to adapt accordingly just to keep going and trying to hit that vision within the next few years. So that is what I think most of them should have. I mean, know your why. Why are you coming? Why are you doing it in the first place? I mean, even if it's to, increase your income, like, okay, you're increasing your income. There's so many ways of increasing your income, right? So why this particular way of increasing your income? Why real estate? Why healthcare? Why wellness? Why that particular field? What does that mean to you? And once you figure that out, I think that's going to be enough fuel to keep going to. The difference is made in society.
Yep, definitely. I'd love to hear from San as well. Some of the things that she's learned, even from talking to her young entrepreneurs, as to things that she wishes that they would have learned. I know that one of the things we talked about here on IBM TV is that we would wish that they would teach more kind of like courses around entrepreneurship and around even fiscal responsibility on our like high school level and on our various school levels. A lot of times we don't get that until college, and even sometimes we don't get it in the college level. But I'd love to hear your thoughts on some of the things that you would like to you wish your young entrepreneurs would bring to the fold when you were talking to them?
Okay, yes, I agree with Richard. You need to know your why because your why will keep you going when you're hearing a no, and doors are shut, they're not opening. Running a nonprofit for 13 years, I would receive maybe 11 no's and then a yes, but my why kept me going. But when I coach young entrepreneurs, first of all, I remind them what an entrepreneur is. We are an answer to a problem. We have a solution to a problem. And I also encourage them once they think about that idea, that solution, that service, that good, that product, take that risk because your brain can actually talk you out of it because our brain is created to keep us safe. And if we feel like, no, I won't be able to do this, you can really that self-talk, that negative self-talk can convince you not to take a risk. And as an entrepreneur, we are always taking risks. And don't be afraid to take risks and to receive that award. Once again, I encourage entrepreneurs to build a team. Don't try to do it all yourself. Stay in your lane. What comes natural for you, what you're good at, you can always build a team, someone to market for you, someone to create, your flyers, someone who could do whatever you may need, the financial piece. So stay in your lane, build a team to support you so you don't feel burnt out so soon, and network with a body of people, like we said, the Every Dot Black and other entrepreneur organizations. Network with like minded people because people who are not entrepreneurial minded can also talk you out of your blessing.
No, no doubt about that. And one of the other things that I sometimes wonder about is that we don't do a great job of even teaching about entrepreneurship in terms of its historical element. Like here in Durham, we have the Black Wall Street. Tulsa also had a Black Wall Street. There are a number of other communities, but unfortunately, we sometimes hear like the superstars of that story, but we don't hear the whole story of what was going on in the entrepreneurship lane. Like I said, everybody knows the story, even coming back to your hair care of Madam C.J. Walker and everything of that nature, but we don't always know some of the other people that were involved in that story with her. I mean, we learned more about that after that movie came out recently, but there were a number of other folks, including Miss Malone and a couple of others that were involved in that whole creation of what was going on. And I don't know that we hear enough of those stories of the history of entrepreneurship. I mean, one of the greatest entrepreneurs in my mind was Benjamin Franklin. I mean, he did all kinds of entrepreneurship ideas and George Washington Carver, but I don't know that we hear enough of their entrepreneurial stories. Even some of our founding fathers, I would argue, had some entrepreneurship businesses. Some of the businesses we don't want them to go back into, like some of them were involved in things like slavery and stuff like that. But they had some other entrepreneurship fields that they were involved in as well, whether it was Thomas Jefferson or Anthony Hamilton or a number of others. But would you agree with me, Richard, that we don't hear enough of the stories of entrepreneurship?
Yeah, I think most of the stories are quite, like similar. You just keep hearing of someone who went to like a huge, Ivy League, and for some reason they had the venture bagged, and all of a sudden they became a billionaire somehow. Like that's pretty much the same story all over again. And we don't really hear about stories that diverge from that. Like there are so many stories of entrepreneurship, right? And there are different kinds of entrepreneurship. I mean, there are ones that want to be huge and everything, and there are ones that are actually making an impact in different societies that are actually really important. And I think every single story of entrepreneurship should be told because of the fact that once the story is told, it's actually going to inspire more people once they read that story to actually, set off on the same journey. And if you think about it from a national point of view, most countries actually, thrive on entrepreneurship because that's literally the part of the economy that is actually driving the country. There are so many big companies, but then if you look at the percentage, where I think it's more than 50% of the economy is actually run by small businesses and entrepreneurship. So I believe that, those are the ones should also be highlighted, not just on the bigger ones who are also like not really contributing. They're contributing, but not to the extent at which all these small businesses are making an impact within their society. So the way I see it, honestly, is like any person who has the vision or the audacity to actually go out and make a difference, start something, whether it's a restaurant or a food delivery company or anything, should it's worthy of getting that story out there to inspire the next generation and to actually take on a different problem in society. So that, I believe, should be a thing. Should be a regular thing in society where stories are just told.
No, I
Yeah.
agree with you on that. And Stan, I was wondering if you could tell us even some of the folks that might have inspired you, because like I said, I know you've been in the field for a number of years, and there are probably some great entrepreneurs that have inspired you as well here in this area, whether they're folks in the Raleigh-Durham area or whether they're national figures. But who were some of the people in the entrepreneurship world that have been your inspirations?
Well, I'd like to say my mother and my grandmothers definitely were inspirations to me. But I think if we all think about it, entrepreneurship really runs through our veins. Whether it was mom, cooking pies and selling pies, or making baskets, or doing, someone's hair. We've always had that entrepreneurial spirit around us. It's taken it to another level. It's being privy to the resources and the opportunities, to taking it to another level. So at least that's my story. My mom owned a boutique on Federal Street years ago in the 80s. And I know what it feels like to hope customers come in and support so that you could, get groceries for the week and take care of other things for the household. So I know the importance of supporting small businesses, supporting Black businesses. I know it firsthand. My grandmother, once again, she in her community, she would, sell different items from her home. She was retired, but she would, sell drinks and different types of desserts and things of that nature, just to be able to buy medicine. So entrepreneurship has always been around me. And as a teen, I just felt like, why can't we ever make it to that next level? And
Hmm.
so that was one of the things that kept me going and starting the Young Entrepreneur Expo with my sister Rhonda Cozart. We've done the Young Entrepreneur Expo for 6 years in Durham at the Hayti Heritage Center, where I would usually see you,
Right.
Mark. And like you said, entrepreneurship is not taught in most schools. Now they're starting in certain maybe uh, call those community schools, charter schools, but most schools they do not teach entrepreneurship. They teach you to learn how to recite things, pass a test, and go to college. Not be a free thinker, not be creative and create things and things of that nature, but how to recite and how to pass this test and go to college and work for someone else and get that position in the corporate America. And my parents taught us to be entrepreneurial minded. And so yes, so they inspired me as well as I'm just inspired by so many entrepreneurs. I'm trying to think of someone. Miss Hester in Durham, she
Right.
inspires me. Real estate and being able to offer a place for other Black business to thrive. So yes, I would say in Durham, Miss Hester definitely is an inspiration and a mentor for me.
Yeah,
Mhm.
speaking of which, and I love it, I'm sure Richard would love to hear this as well, but I do remember that youth entrepreneurship conference that y'all did for a number of years. And some of those products that those kids were coming up were truly amazing. Like I said, I'm sure Richard would love to hear about some of those products. I remember there was one, I think it was a young lady that had like her own comic book and things of that nature, and there were a number of others. So I would love it if you could share some of the stories of those young entrepreneurs and if they are still pursuing their entrepreneurship as far as you know.
Yes, most of them are still pursuing their entrepreneurship goals. They are on Instagram, you know, they're on Instagram, Twitter, what is it, TikTok, you name it. They are definitely into technology and marketing better than some adults that I know. So yes, we have our youngest entrepreneur, 7 years old, uh, creating jewelry, their own soaps, T-shirts. We have young authors. Um, you name it. We had a young girl who designed shoes, and the Young Entrepreneur Expo gave them a platform to network with the community and for people to come in and encourage them because money is an encourager. They're people buying things and they're making money and they see, oh, this is a path that I can take and it can be profitable. And they're learning business 101. They're learning to use a pitch. They have to, share their product and their marketing. They create their flyers, their posters, and the finance. They're exchanging money. So they're learning the basics there. And we also have some who are performers who want to be singers and dancers and actors. So we have that entertainment piece that go along with the Young Entrepreneur Expo. And we really enjoy providing that platform for youth to have because they need somewhere to dream and to be encouraged to dream. And it's okay to be creative and think outside the box.
Yeah, I agree with you. And Richard, I was wondering if y'all have had anybody on LSX that has actually been in that youth market or had any youth entrepreneurs yet, or has it all been folks that are like college age and above? So I'd love to hear your thoughts on whether you've had any youth or whether you'd be open to having any youth using the platform of LSX and all of that. And then the other thing that I was curious to hear from both of y'all is I sometimes feel that too often we've gotten trained to wanting to go into, and you kind of alluded to it, saying into going into the corporate world and wanting to develop that corporate mindset. Whereas I sometimes
Mhm.
think we squash the entrepreneurship mindset because we try to discourage people from that. And too often they go into the job market. I mean, there's nothing wrong with the corporate America or even like some of the research corporate America, like the Glaxos and everything of the world. But I do sometimes feel that we sometimes discourage folks from going into entrepreneurship because it's not the easy and safe way to try to make a success in life.
Mhm. Yeah, back to the first question, I think you asked about whether we've had any youth on LSX so far. So far, it's actually not really been any youth per se. Most of them are like, older. Have a business for a while now, and they're just using the platform to get the word out about what they're working on. We would definitely like to have youth on the platform. As long as they have like a huge commitment to what they're working on, because we don't want to get people on the platform who just had like an idea or like just working on something for the short term. But we want people who actually join the platform who are looking to actually take whatever they're working on really far. So as long as you're planning to, keep working at whatever their problem they're solving for quite a while, we'll be happy to have them on the platform. That said, we have this invite-only community, right? So once you join a platform, founders on their platform help each other out. We have these community events where we sometimes bring a reporter or we bring in a VC to just share ideas, and you can ask them any questions and pretty much increase the value of the whole community on the platform too. So that's what we've been up to for a while now. Yeah, and the college thing, that is an interesting question. So, my opinion on that is entrepreneurship, I don't think you need to necessarily work in corporate America to actually be a founder or anything. If you think about it, right, most people who've actually made a big impact in any particular industry, most of them don't really have that background because they don't really have that background. Let's pick it. One of the major examples, let's say Elon Musk, right? Because let's say him. He doesn't have any background in car making or space rockets. He just sort of like, okay, I have a vision that I want to go to Mars sometime in the future, and I'm going to do that. I'm going to set out and try and get that to work out. That's literally it. That's all you need to actually, and also the willpower to keep going, because it's not going to be easy. So I think once you have an idea of like a future version of the world that does not really exist before, you don't really need to go through corporate America, because what you've been trying to create, they haven't even seen that before most of the times. And what's the point in going to learn from people who have this sort of like fixed mindset of how things should be done, or this cannot be done because of this and this and that, instead of saying, okay, this can be done because of these 0.01 chance it could still be done, and betting on there's that 0.01 opportunity instead of the 98% or 99% that is going to be false. And I think it takes a kind of person to go against the grind, even if there's a high probability of failing. And those are the ones who usually succeed at entrepreneurship, because they go against everything and still somehow become really like end up making a really good impact in society. So I don't think you need to go through corporate America. I think you just need to have a vision, have a goal. Be determined. Learn really fast on your own, because you can always learn all these things through books, YouTube videos, experience. yeah, and just make it happen. You don't need to go through any corporate America before. Yeah.
No, I agree. Sand, what are your thoughts on that? You actually also came out of the world of nonprofits, and I sometimes think that just like corporations will sometimes suppress what's going on in terms of creating entrepreneurship, sometimes the nonprofits have their own mission, so they sometimes don't always encourage entrepreneurship. So, how did you deal with your entrepreneurship dream while also working in the nonprofit world?
Yes. Well, actually, it's my family's nonprofit, and we created it together. So, still using that entrepreneurial hat, we started from the ground up, just learning, and like you said, reading and researching. We started in memory of my mother, actually, who was an entrepreneur. So that's why it embodied everything that she represented, which is creativity, entrepreneurship, and community service. Uh, so yes, do I think you have to go to corporate America? No. I am a proponent of knowing what comes easy to you. Like you said, Elon Musk, what comes natural for Elon Musk don't come natural for me. I have to, so you have to know what comes natural for you. What are you good at? What are your strengths? And maybe perhaps use that if you want to be an entrepreneur to create a product, a good, or a service. And I don't think there's anything wrong with corporate America. Go see what they are doing, learn, and bring it back into your own corporation. Maybe you want to work there for a few years and then come back and use that knowledge or those that network. So I see a lot of people doing that as well. I am just a proponent of following your own path, your own journey. Don't try to walk in someone else's footsteps. So there's no cookie cutter way.
Yeah, that makes sense. And both of you, and that's part of what LSX is all about, is networking. So I would love if you could talk about the importance of networking in the entrepreneurship journey. Because like I said, that to me is a vital part of entrepreneurship. It's definitely a vital part of what LSX does. So if you could talk about the importance of networking and what you think are good ways of networking. I know that even on this platform on IBM TV, I've oftentimes talked about folks that have the business cards. I've got thousands of them, if not tens of thousands. And sometimes you get those business cards, but you don't always use the cards in the correct way. So I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about the importance of networking and things of that nature. Yeah, I think that's you saying. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I had a problem with the sound for a bit. Um, so I think particularly with networking, right? Networking is actually really essential in entrepreneurship. I think if it comes down to it, is about if you think about it from a very core first principles point of view, it's more about who you know, because again, you might have a really good idea, right? But like for your ideas to be viable, you may need to talk to someone who is in like a corporate society or like somewhere. And I mean, sometimes you don't really have that network once you're like, let's say, straight out of school or something like that. And how do you actually connect with those people? I mean, back to Sam's point, I like the networking aspect of corporate America. But then, I mean, some part of it is like, I mean, the part where the learning aspect is also good, but how do you actually leverage that network once you come out of it to be able to connect with, I mean, people who can help you champion your ideas. So I mean, how do I see networking should be done? Networking is not really a thing about it shouldn't be a thing about like trying to get something from someone always. It's about, okay, so what can I give first? You go for a networking event, you meet people, whether it's online or offline. Like, look, okay, so you have a skill set. This person is talking about a problem they may be facing. Can you be of help? Or do you know anyone in your network who might be able to help this person out? Do you know any resources that, I mean, could be helpful to this person's journey? So anything like that, you could just, offer like advice, offer value first, and I mean keep giving, and to the point that once you have a need, I mean people are, I mean, sort of like really excited to actually help you out, because once you just go with like I want to get kind of mentality, it gets really hard because of the fact that everyone sort of like wants something from someone else. Yeah. And one more thing, Mark, I mean I have a meeting in a bit, like in 5 minutes, so I would
Okay.
have to drop off a bit early.
No problem. And like I said, we've got some time, and I think I'll have some other guests coming on in the near future as well. But definitely, one of the things I would love to have you share is definitely ways that folks can get in touch with LSX and any kind of like final thoughts, because that's one of the things I try to do with all my guests, if they've got any final thoughts of positivity or a positive message that they would like to share. So I would love to have you do that, Richard, since I know you said you got to jump off in 5 minutes for
Yeah.
another meeting. So I would love you to share your positive thoughts and any words of encouragement that you would like to give to entrepreneurs.
Yeah, I think my word of encouragement is, I mean, savor Thanksgiving, and it's Thanksgiving season, right? You guys should just take a break. I know the whole journey is hard. It's you need to always be on your feet and always getting things done. But I mean, it's okay once in a while to take a break and I mean take a breather to be able to relax your brain and get ready for the next part of the journey. So it's important to also think about your health. And I mean, we're in Thanksgiving season, so the best thing right now I can tell you that I mean take tomorrow off at least, and I mean join the family, reconnect with I mean your loved ones and your friends, and whether it's over Zoom or in real life. I mean, I'm sure it's going to be mostly over Zoom because of what's happening. But yeah, just be out there, get to know people again, and I mean, get back again on the whole journey starting Monday morning, I suppose.
Definitely. And tell folks how they can get in touch with LSX. And once again, if you want to share what kind of businesses you're looking for, maybe you have enough businesses, you don't need any more. But if you need some more businesses, if you want to share how folks can reach you and the whole onboarding process, maybe San and some of her folks may want to try to join the LSX family.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty straightforward. You just go to our website, which is, I mean, www.lsx.com. There's a button you click that says you're interested, and once you click that, we will reach out to you if you're a good fit, because we have to make sure that I mean your company exists and like everything else, background checks and all that stuff. But once everything looks good, you just pretty much just come on the platform. It's pretty straightforward. It's a paid product, so it's I think we're monthly subscription, and it's pretty very affordable because we try to make it sure that anybody could actually get access to the platform, not just to, I mean, make it look like something that is for exclusive people. Once you have a business that you have running and it makes a lot of, and you're making money or you're, I mean, committed to it, we would love to have you on the platform. And yeah, I mean, feel free to reach out anytime. I mean, our Twitter handle is LSX Inc., or you could just email us as info@lsx.com to just so we can answer any questions you may have, whatever kind of questions. We're open to answering that. So yeah, again, we're looking forward to having you. And ultimately what we're trying to do as a company is create a platform that I mean can help innovators, irrespective of who they are, to be able to connect with I mean people who are willing to tell their stories, whether it's in events or in media or newsletters and podcasts. Yeah, we have a platform here for you waiting. So once you're ready, just come join us.
Sounds great. So definitely, San, you'll have to join their platform and everything. But definitely, I know that he's gonna have to bounce off, and we'll keep talking for a while. I think I've got a couple of others. I don't know what your time frame is like, but definitely, we're always great to have great conversations and everything. So definitely appreciate you joining us, Richard, and sharing the story of LSX, because there are some great entrepreneurs that I've met through the platform, and I've even reached out to a few more that'll hopefully be coming on either the IBM TV family or on the Straight Talk with Dean and Mark podcast. But we're definitely looking forward to continuing the relationship with LSX and having some other businesses, because I think there's at least 2 or 3 that I'm in the process of talking to now. So hopefully they'll get lined up for the rest of the year or the end of the year between
Yeah.
November and December. And I know that y'all will be recruiting new ones that you'll send my way as well. So glad to have you on here. Glad to have this conversation with you, Richard. I know that we've talked about having Leah join as well. I think she might join sometime in December. So I'm looking forward to having her join us as well. So definitely look forward to that. And I know you're going to go and enjoy the turkey dinner with, I think you said, some family members there in
Definitely.
Boston. Now that you've come back from the Denver area, you won't get a chance to go back to your home country and everything, but that'll happen maybe through Zoom and everything. So maybe you have a
Yeah.
Zoom conversation with the folks back in the homeland.
Yeah, I mean, thank you so much, Mark, and great meeting you, San. I really appreciate what you're doing for the whole community, and yeah, thank you so much, and I'm glad to join you guys later. Bye.
Sounds great.
Bye.
Cool. So, Sam, you've got that great line and everything. And like I said, I knew that I had different guests, but I've definitely been quite impressed by the things that you're doing with the books, because there's several books that you're working on. And the artwork, by the way, is truly amazing. I was checking out those pictures, and it's some great artwork and all of that. And like I said before, I think of you as being one of the leading entrepreneurs here in this town. You've been involved in so many fields of entrepreneurship. Like I said, you got the family nonprofit. You've also been involved with Patricia Tabern and her modeling agency for a number of years and everything. So definitely for those that are watching globally, because we are a global network, I just heard my friend Ankit, who's one of the producers out of India, he had clicked one of the like buttons. So I know that he's watching from all the way there in India. So if you would like to share a little bit more of your story so that he can learn more about your whole background. Like I said, we touched on some of it, but I'm sure that our global audience would like to hear more of the various things that you've done, because you've done so many amazing things, whether that's the modeling, whether that's the work in the nonprofit, or in a number of other fields. But if you want to share a little bit of your personal story, I'm sure that our global audience would love to hear more of who San Griffin is and what she's been doing in this field for decades now.
Yes, thank you again for the opportunity, Mike. Can you hear me clearly?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. My earbuds went out. Well, I want to share how your listeners and viewers can reach me and learn a lot more about myself. I'm not used to talking about myself this long, but you could definitely come to my website, Aggrandize Your Life, www.aggrandize yourlife.com, which means enlarge your life. And enlarging your life through networking, which we discussed, personal and professional development. That's what Aggrandize Your Life is about, and transformative thinking, transformative literature, and products. Once again, the Black Hair Love books can be found on Amazon and different platforms worldwide, Amazon and Kindle. You can also go to blackhairlove.info, blackhairlove.info, and you would see the blog that we have there, products, as well as the books. Patricia Taborn Modeling Agency, which is my family's nonprofit, is on Facebook. If you go on Facebook, you can put in PTMA or Patricia Taborn Modeling Agency, which we are in the process of revamping, and we're changing the name to Patricia Taborn Math and Arts Foundation. But you still can find them on Facebook, and if you connect with me, I'll definitely connect with you, follow back, and we can definitely stay in touch. But yes, so I definitely want to share that information on how we could connect and link.
Yep, definitely. And we do believe in linking in and connecting folks. I did want to bring in another guest that has popped in, that being David Serafine, who I have met through a variety of sources, including having some mutual friends that are common friends in Raquel and a number of other folks. But you are also been involved in kind of like personal branding and bettering ourselves and things of that nature. So I'd love you to share a little bit of your story, David, so that San can learn a little bit about you. Unfortunately, Richard had to bounce off, who's with LSX, but I know that a lot of what you do is also around us trying to understand our personal brand and being better in ourselves. So I would love to hear a little bit more of your story as well.
Absolutely. And thank you, Mark. I appreciate that. And San, nice to meet you as well. So yeah, I think that I've been a writer for about 7 years now, and mostly industry-based publications, so not very interesting, very dry stuff, but always enjoyed writing. And then two of my family members came down with forms of dementia, my wife's family. And so from that standpoint, watching that process go from the start of it until the end of it basically inspired me to write a novel based on that circumstance. It's fictional, of course, but you draw a lot from personal experience and the way that it ended, kind of button the whole thing together. But the difference with this particular film is if you look at the other dementia-themed films, that being The Notebook, that being Still Alice, Away from Her, these are all driven from a Caucasian perspective. And so the one thing that we're doing very differently with this film is we're showcasing the very demographic most impacted by the disease, that being the minority community. So the casting, the storytelling, everything is told from a different perspective, a different voice that is much needed, has not been done before. So from that standpoint, the subsequent outreach on the back end, when this film is done and you have 65 cities on a film festival circuit, there are going to be outreaches in those very cities that we're trying to reach that otherwise would never be reached before. So that's kind of it in a nutshell.
Yeah, and that's an issue that is definitely something that I know a lot has impacted a lot of folks. Like I mentioned to you, I've had some family members that have dealt with either Alzheimer's or dementia or a number of other things. I'm sure that even San has probably had some family members of some sort or another in her family that have dealt with that. It is an issue that we oftentimes don't hear about in our community and everything. So I was wondering if you could share that, because I think that it's something that is ignored both in the African American community, in the Latin American community, and a number of other communities as well. So, and I know part of that is that, to be perfectly honest, and it even comes up in some of the COVID talks, we don't necessarily have the greatest history with the ways that medical professions have treated minorities in terms of like even the way that things are. There's a lot of folks that are very cautious, and I'll just put it diplomatically, about the vaccines and the vaccines that are out there, because they remember the Alzheimer's, not the Alzheimer's, but they remember the things that the Tuskegee Airmen went through. They remember some of the things they went through with AIDS and a number of other diseases, and how that impacted our community and impacted it in a negative front. So is that part of what you're also finding? Is there a lot of folks have that fear because of that medical history?
I think that there are so many things I learned with the start of this process. I think first and foremost, the immediate thing to me was that the minority community is more impacted by the diseases themselves, 60% more so than the Caucasian groups. That's the first thing that came out. The second thing that I learned very quickly is less than 1% actually carry the markers for early onset Alzheimer's. So what does that mean? The early onset marker is the one that you're guaranteed to get Alzheimer's. The other 99% that don't have the early onset markers, you can prevent it. You can do things in your life earlier on where you don't act as a catalyst to Alzheimer's itself. So perfect example is if I told a 15-year-old from today, we're going to eat well, we're going to sleep well, we're not going to drink in excess, we're not going to, if you have any PTSD issues that are unresolved, all of those things put together will act as a catalyst to bring Alzheimer's to fruition, so to speak. So that part of the awareness program is if you get to the very demographic that's suffering from it and say, you can stop this. And the interesting thing with me was the very first gentleman I reached out to, his name is Dr. Richard Harris, African-American doctor, wonderful guy. He's a wellness doctor as well. So he's got the medical background. He practices safe living, holistic living. We were in a podcast yesterday and he came flat out and said, I've got the markers. Both my parents died from it. However, it is preventable. But if you say that to the vast majority of people, they'd say, no, it's not preventable. You get it or you don't get it. No, it is. The vast majority is preventable. So for me, getting to the very demographics, the communities, and saying, it's time out. We've got researchers, we've got doctors, we've got wellness practitioners. Meditation is a big thing. All of these different avenues by which you can learn and take control of it yourself versus I just have to wait for a cure. That's what we're trying to inspire within the groups that we're talking with right now.
Yeah, and one of the things, coming back to even Sands product, you didn't hear the earlier part of the show, but one of the things she's done is she's created this whole book line. And I know she's got to get ready to leave, but I would love for you to talk about that connection, because I think that there's a lot of similarities in what she's doing. Part of the reason that she created the book line that she has is because she was finding that there was a lot of stereotypes existing around the way that we treat the African American population based on having quote unquote good hair or not good hair and things of that nature. And I think that that's some of the same things that we find in the medical community, even with some of the diseases and everything. But I would love to hear Sam's perception of what you've been talking about and how it might even tie into the book, because I do know that she's got to leave shortly as well. But definitely I would love for you to share with David a little bit about the book once again, and a little bit about what the book is all about, so he can hear that story as well.
Oh, wonderful. Well, David, it's a pleasure to meet you, and I definitely will stay connected and love to watch your work and be a part of that. Yes, I would just like to say that we have been told the dominant culture perspective. And even in literature, you don't hear, the African-American voice or the Asian or, different Latino. So I'm grateful that this year has brought about, some awareness and a lot of, influx in new literature, films, and a new perspective, a new way of looking at things. And I like to call my books a mirror book and a window book. And the window book is allowing other cultures to see how we feel about our hair, to see what we love about our hair and some of our traditions. And the mirror book is for young Black children to see themselves and see themselves affirmed as beautiful and unique and valuable. So I like the film that you have created because it's going to be a window film for me to see. A lot of my elders have passed on. And yes, my great aunt, she did have Alzheimer's. And so your film is going to be a mirror film for me because I don't have anyone to talk to say, hey, what are some of the symptoms? What did you do to prevent this? Or what were you going through? So your film is going to be a window film for me.
It's amazing. I love that perspective and that feedback. And again, I mean, people look at me and say, how are you producing this? I'm getting people that can speak with that voice. I can't speak with that voice. Other people can speak with that voice and the passion behind it. I can't. I recognize that, which is the very reason I'm saying, if you look at the 4 films that were out there, The Notebook, Still Alice, Away From Her, it's been told with the same singular voice. I'm not knocking what they've done. I'm simply saying it's an incomplete picture of the disease itself. And therefore, I think that it's very necessary. It's good for everybody to understand. That's the Latino community, the African-American community, it's the Asian community. Those are the demographics that are impacted. Yet it's not featured in any of the films that we have right now. And not only that, on the back end of it, the film for me is a means to an end to get to the actual communities where the film festival is. The goal for me is to get the doctors, the telehealth, the researchers, the wellness practitioners, get them in front of the communities that are in the cities that the film festival is held, get the voices directly in the dialogue back and forth with the groups. It's not, for me, it's not just the film. It's the vehicle by which I can engage the communities I would like to engage.
No, that makes a lot of sense. And one of the things, and like I said, I know you got bouncing a little bit, Sam, but one of the things that I know that I've always admired about you, and it's something that the doctor that David is referring to talked about yesterday and everything, Dr. Richard, is that you have always been very much about wellness eating and trying to eat healthy and things of that nature. And that's something that you've even encouraged through the modeling agency, through a number of other things. And I think that that's something that's been missing. I'm not going to lie. I even mentioned that on the platform that David was on and everything. I sometimes rush a little bit too fast to go grab the fast food and all of that just because it's quick and easy and convenient. But it's also not healthy if you're trying to have a healthy lifestyle, whether that's trying to fight Alzheimer's or dementia before you have the signs of it or the symptoms of it, or whether that's dealing with more common things like diabetes and things of that nature. But as I've always heard you talk about on a lot of your platforms, because you do sometimes have exercise elements to your youth expo. I remember there was some people involved in martial arts, and there were a number of other folks who were doing health-related things. So it does seem to me saying that health and wellness has been an important part of your mission as well. So I'm sure that David would love to hear the importance of that to your life, because it does seem to me, from what I remember, that that's an important part of your mission.
Yes, absolutely. There's definitely a connection. Science tells us that there's a connection between the brain and the gut and so what we're eating and things of that nature also fuels, the reproduction of those cells and dendrites and things like that in our brain. And I'm still learning. I'm not a guru on this, but once I learn nuggets like that, that's going to help improve, my life and longevity. Why not? And once again, that's what your film is all about: sharing these truths and these nuggets so that we can implement them in our lives and have a better life.
I love your perspective on the window. That's brilliant. I never would have thought of that on my own, but I'm going to use that going forward. I'm going to credit you with that term because I love that. It is literally a window. Mm-hmm. I never would have thought of that. That's brilliant. So, but yeah, I think that it's funny because you hit something critical. And again, I heard that before I started writing this book, but I didn't make the connection until much later on. The gut and the brain and the connectivity. I just didn't know that. And then I started researching it. And the doctor said yesterday, it was interesting. He made a thing about canola oil. If you're cooking with canola oil, you're cooking with processed things that process gasoline and stuff like that. And his point was garbage in, garbage out. That was the whole bottom line point. But yeah, the exercise, the rest, the meditation piece, which I am not good at. I have to learn how to actually do that more effectively. But all of this and the gut health, all that stuff put together. And again, this is a wellness across the board. You mentioned that, Mark, about diabetes and other things. You're right, 100%. I was solely focused on one story in Alzheimer's because that's what I wrote about. That's what I experienced and watched. But the more that I now learn from guys like Dr. Harris, it's like, look, if you do this, it counts towards diabetes, it counts towards heart disease, it counts towards Alzheimer's, it counts towards a lot of things. So it's a really good conversation to be having.
Yeah, definitely. And Saying, I know you said you had to leave and everything, but I'm not, as long as you can stick around, I'd love you to stick around as long as you can. But definitely, one of the things I was going to say is that everybody that I've had on, including Richard, I give them that chance to give their final thoughts, their words of positivity. So if you have to bounce, I'd love to hear your words of positivity and ways that folks can reach out to you and everything if they're interested in learning more about the book and the whole series that you got.
Okay. Yes. Thanksgiving is tomorrow, and I do have to cook. But my final thoughts. It's been a pleasure to meet you, David, Mark. Thank you, and Richard earlier. I just love being around creative people and people that are adding value to lives. And what you are doing, David, is going to change lives. It's going to prevent premature, death and all that wonderfulness. And Mark, you're sharing this worldwide. Yes. So I just love being around movers and shakers like you all. So thank you. It's just a pleasure to be here. So just keep sharing love and light. We need more love and more light. Final words.
Yeah. No doubt about that. That's actually interesting that you use the term love and light, because my good friend Zach Robertson, who does a funk show here on the IBM TV network, he's oftentimes talking about light workers, and that's what he calls folks that are sharing this message of love and light throughout the world. So he says that we need more light workers throughout society, and he definitely encourages that to go on. And he would mention Raquel, who is how I met David and everything, is one of those light workers, and I met Raquel through Brian and Tim, who are definitely light workers out there. So there are a number of folks that, although we're hearing the negative and we're hearing the negative kind of like sparks that go on through Twitter and through some of our so-called leadership, it's great to know that there are forces out there that are not necessarily going to be encouraging the negative. They're going to be encouraging the positive, kind of like what David is doing in his work with his film and his book and all of that. So definitely I agree that we need to have more of this kind of like images out there, and more of these kind of like positive images, even to the images of some of the pictures that you have on your book. So I'm sure that David, and we had that earlier, I'm sure David would like to see some of those pictures once again, so he can see the pictures of the gentleman, including some that are your relatives. So if you want to show David the pictures on the book, and before you go cook that turkey, I'm sure that we would love to have that as well.
Yes, absolutely. Okay. So David and the World Wide Web. This is my son, my middle son. No, I'm sorry, my youngest son, Mitchell. And I put him up here because his other brother will always get comments about he had good hair. But Mitchell didn't come home with those comments. Confirm him that, all hair is good hair. And so that's what this book is all about. It's a tool for parents and for you to use to feel, boost their confidence, to affirm that they are beautiful, their hair is beautiful. It's underrepresented hair in literature. But this book is an answer to that problem. And I was inspired by Toni Morrison that said, if you don't see the book you want to read, then you should write it. So if you don't see the film you want to see, then you should produce it.
That's exactly right. I could not agree more. That's perfect. That is absolutely perfect.
And so we have the preschool book here. And this young fella, I know his mom does my hair. And so I wanted to make sure young Black boys saw themselves in literature. And this is the artwork of Igea Charles out of South Carolina. She's a young 23-year-old artist, and that's what she does full time. That's her superpower, and we collaborated. So yeah, that's just a little bit.
I'm gonna follow you for sure. The minute I get off this, I'm gonna go on LinkedIn and hook up with you. Because I think that's fantastic. That's great stuff. So,
and I want to keep up with the film too. I want to be a part of that release, and I will share it with my network as well.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Awesome.
No doubt about that. So I'm going to let San go and get ready to cook that turkey and everything. If she wants to ship some over here on Friday, I will not argue with that whatsoever. I'll be at Mom's house in Rocky Mount on Thursday. But Friday, if she wants to ship some over here, no argument.
All right. Happy holidays.
San, thank you. Happy holidays.
Bye-bye.
Bye. So definitely a great conversation, and I know Sam's getting ready to slide on over there. But David, like I said, I was totally amazed by some of the things that you were talking about in your book. I did tell Richard that I would like him to pop in, so I don't know if he'll get a chance to or not. But if he does, that would be great part of the conversation. But I would love to know more about who David Serafine is, the author, and who he was before he even discovered this passion of his. And like you said, part of that passion was because of some things that were going on in your own family. So I would love to hear about more as to how you got involved in the creative world and a little bit more about your own background before actually discovering this passion of yours, because I do consider this a passion project. And there are a number of times that we find our passion projects, whatever that may be. I know I had the pleasure of talking to Russ Hedge, who is another member of the whole LinkedIn family, and he's written a book called Befuddled, which is kind of like his whole attitude of everything. But definitely know that we all have our various passion projects. I would consider these various streaming podcasts, as well as the audio one that I do, some of my passion projects. But I would love to hear a little bit about how David got involved in the work that he's doing. And I've actually got one other little thing that we do on this show that I have not been doing during the time that San and Richard was on, but I'm getting ready to explain it to David. But we have this ongoing game that goes on because it is an online dinner party. So it's kind of like a trivia thing. If folks feel like playing that are in the whole show and everything, they can, but it's really geared more toward the audience that might be watching. The one rule is that they cannot be going in replay, because if you go in replay, then you can easily find the answer. So they have to actually win during the time of the show and all of that. So I'm going to bring in some of the clues, and this particular person will be somebody out of the world of news and maybe a newsmaker. So the person is, he interviewed world leaders and political figures, including Nelson Mandela in 1990, Yasser Arafat in 1992, Khorasan Aquino in 1986, and the U.S. presidential candidate, Gary Hart. So that's one of the clues about our mystery guest, and I will reveal his picture at the end of the show and everything. So that was one of them. He's also been on a show that was very popular, and a lot of folks may be able to figure out who this person is after I reveal the show, but I'll give the back end of the clue, which is that he was not the original anchor of a particular nightly news show. It was actually Frank Reynolds. So he was not the original anchor of a particular show and everything. It was actually Frank Reynolds. And I also think I have a couple of quotes of his as well. So I'm going to try to pull up the quotes. His quotes are just fascinating. I'm sure that even in your work, you found that quotes can oftentimes be really the measure of a person, a measure of their thought patterns, and things along that line. So I'm going to bring in a couple of his quotes and everything. So one of them that he said is that pessimists calculate the odds, optimists believe that they can overcome them. So definitely that is a great quote and all of that. And I know that a lot of folks might be able to agree with all of that. And he also had this quote, which is, apply a rigid standard of morality to your life, and if periodically you fall, as you surely will, adjust your lives and the standard. So that's one of his quotes and everything. And he also said this, which is a very great one, which is, aspire to decency, practice civility toward one another, admire and emulate ethical behavior wherever you find it. So definitely, I think those are some great thought patterns that this particular person in the field of news put out there. Oh, and this one is a great one. He said, our society finds the truth too strong a medicine to digest undiluted. In its purest form, truth is not a polite tap on the shoulder, it is a howling reproach. And that was an address that he actually gave not that far where I'm at, because I'm here in Durham, North Carolina. So he gave that as an address that he gave on Duke University's campus. So that's just some of the clues. And hopefully somebody on our comment section will figure out that they know who that person is before the end of the show. But that's just one of the people. I've also got a Hollywood type that I'll bring up some of their clues about them as well. And one that I know nobody's going to get because it's from Ecuador and it's from the world of pop art and popular kind of like niche art, I guess is a better way of putting it. But I'm hoping that they'll get at least one of the two main people, because I think that they're fairly well known and everything. But definitely, I would love to hear your story now that folks are hopefully watching and maybe scratching their head trying to figure out who that person is.
Well, I can assure you that none of my quotes are going to be on the nightly news or anything like that. But no, I think my whole story is that, I went to college and studied criminology and biology. And I got a very fortuitous bounce working for some great people in North Carolina, actually, not far from RTP is where I started my security career down there. I moved up to Washington, D.C., and then eventually landed in Austin, Texas. So my whole career has been spent in the security industry. I've been both on the buyer side or the client side. So building a program for, I was part of a program of a Fortune 50 company at one point on that side. And then on the services side right now, I run a global account for a fantastic customer. And I've been doing that for the last 5 years at this point. I was a consultant in security for 4 years as well. But I'd always found myself wanting to write. I've always wanted to create, put stories together, creative writing, just put something out to write poems, things like that. And then I think that at one point back in 2005, my professional certification was set to expire if I didn't get a number of credits back towards the organization. And so I knew that I would not get there. And I pitched a white paper to them and said, if I write something, will you give some credit back to my overall program advancement? They did. So I ended up writing a book for the industry called Value-Based Security Procurement, which it's valuable for the industry. I would not suggest that as far as a creative writing thing to look at, but it's not a creative piece, but it was good for what it served. And I did that and continued writing other little short stories from there. And then, as I mentioned before, I was set to write a fictional novel for something entirely different, but family members came down with dementia. And that kind of sparked the passion in me to say, I want to do something different. I want to change the way that this thing played out for us. I want to sit there if I can drive an awareness on the back end of this thing. And I just felt like that became a really strong passion to make a change with that. So fortunately for me, my career, my employer is absolutely tremendous. I still love doing exactly what it is I do, but I also have a peripheral or collateral passion as well to drive and writing. So.
Right. Sounds amazing. Sounds like you've done some great things. Now, for those that have heard that term, and I'm just going to be perfectly honest about it, I have an idea of what securities is, but I'm not going to say that I know 100% what it is. So that's a great thing about being a journalist is I get to ask the questions, so I get to find out what exactly is securities. I've heard that term used several times, but in terms of like the corporate America and everything, but I've never quite got a clear understanding of exactly what that is. And then I definitely will get back to the more passionate thing of Alzheimer's and dementia, but I would love to know more about what securities is because I've heard it used in the banking world, I've heard it used in corporate America, and I'm never quite sure what they're talking about.
So it's actually security, not securities, right? So if you're looking at an organization, you can Google any Fortune 50 company. You have to imagine that everywhere they have retail space, everywhere they have corporate headquarters, everywhere they've got a distribution chain, there's a vast network of security design. So everything from cameras, access control systems, proprietary security designs, intellectual property protection, executive protection, the whole thing that goes into protecting the very brand that we all see in the Fortune 50 news and things like that. That's the security aspect that I do. That's the part that I'm involved in. And again, the company that I work for does the end-to-end the designs, they do the contract security, they do the integration work. They do every piece of that for companies around the globe. So very holistic approach, very comprehensive, and a lot of different avenues one could go into. So if you're a technology-based guy, you may only want to do things such as systems integration work or systems design. If you're more of an executive protection type guy, you want to protect a high-value asset or person, high net worth individual, you may want to go into that particular field. And that's the stuff that movies are made of, like The Bodyguard is a good example, right? But there are a number of different avenues you can go into. I just happen to work for a fantastic company that does this globally for a lot of big companies.
So you would be the one that if like Elon Musk was to walk into town in North Carolina or something like that, you would be the one that would kind of like make sure that he was not like avalanched by the common man and everything of that nature.
I would find a guy that's much more skilled at doing that than I am and say that, yes, I know that is necessary and connect that person with that particular function. I don't do that. There are people that are really skilled at doing that. But as part of a holistic program, that would be one aspect of it for sure.
Gotcha. So definitely trying to make sure that folks are not being abused in that sense and things of that nature. I do know that even on the small offices, because I know I've worked for a couple of arts organizations, and in that sense, security does become an important issue because you want to make sure that whatever the brand is that you're creating, whether that's a brand dealing with, say, a film festival, because I know you're interested in getting involved in film festivals, whether that's a brand dealing with that film festival, like I know we're getting ready to deal with one that's a horror film, but actually the theater company, unfortunately, is getting ready to do a temporary shutdown, and they just announced that today and everything. So I'm not sure where our festival is, but let's say the festival is still going to happen in February. We might want to keep that brand protected in the way that it's known and everything. So it seems to me that that's part of what security work is.
So it is, you're spot on. You're 100% right that it is that. The part that is even shifting more now, it's a little more nuanced. So you take that part that you just said, which is perfect. You're now also the first point of engagement for a brand in many locations. So the first thing they may encounter is a security officer or some version of what it is you're doing to protect the overall asset itself. The nuance now is that you're an advocate for that brand. So if you're a contracted group to provide security for a Fortune 50 company, you may be the very first person that experience that somebody has with Microsoft, Oracle, Google, whoever it might be. You may be the very first point of engagement with the public, with a news station, with whatever it might be. So now it's not just, to put that in quotes, it's not just about protecting the assets within inside. It's protecting the assets inside, but also advocating for the brand that you were there to protect and represent. So it's more the soft skills are being developed much more now. The emotional quotient aspect is much more involved now. In my humble opinion, when I first started in the career, it was more of a loss prevention aspect where no, you can't come in. But there's a more finesse-oriented way for you to make sure that person doesn't enter and still represent the brand well, where they walk away and say, hey, that was a great engagement, yet they didn't let me in. And so that's the subtlety of the program now. But yeah, it's definitely, it's cool. It's good stuff.
Yeah. It sounds like an interesting feeling. Like I said, we'll get back to the other conversation, but I'm wondering, are you also finding now that people are finding that they have to kind of create their own brands? And because of what's going on in COVID, we have so many people that are actually developing their brands. And because they're developing their brands, they want to protect it. Like I mentioned Raquel earlier, and of course, she's got her YouTube channel. I've got my friend Zach that's got a funk band that he's recreating or getting back into place. It had been in place and then they've kind of like gone on hibernation, but now they're coming back. And so, of course, he wants to protect his nappy head brand, just like Raquel wants to protect her brand with this whole YouTube channel that she's going to be doing, addressing youth and things of that nature. So I'm thinking that your kind of work, maybe not necessarily you and the big corporation that you work for, but your kind of work is even more needed because so many people are protecting a smaller brand, but they need to protect that brand.
Yeah, and so that's a great point, right? So both parts of the table. I met this woman on LinkedIn, executive coach who is tremendous. Her name is Sarah Hodges. I would recommend people go on LinkedIn and look her up as well. I had a podcast with her, and it is exactly what you just said. It is about understanding what your brand is, how to finesse your brand, how to protect your brand as an individual, which is something that I'm learning. I have to understand how to do that. And somebody like her is very developed and be able to do that. Great tool sets to do it. That's her skill set. For me, it's more about there's the publicly traded company. And it's a Fortune 50 company or Fortune 100 company. They have a corporate security team on the customer side. They know what they're trying to do with their mission, their goals and objectives. And it's my job to fit in various pieces of that program, or in some cases help develop their own mission or their own vision and help them get to what their end goal is to protect the overall brand. But you bring up a great point. It could start at the individual level. So how I represent myself when I'm speaking with you, and whoever might be listening may walk away and say, he just didn't have it. He just wasn't very good. Wasn't good with words, didn't represent himself well. That's my brand. And so understanding what that looks like and how to present it, that's the start of protecting your brand as well. And then the whole bit about copywriting what your brand might look like down the road, not stealing ideas and phrases and sayings and things like that. That gets a little more sophisticated down there.
Yeah, it gets a lot more sophisticated. And then even in the whole branding thing, it's just a matter of like creating things that enhance your brand. Like I know my friend Brandon has got cups and pillows and keychains, well, not keychains, but phone cases and things of that nature that are part of the brand of what he does here. So now this network has actually kind of created a separate page or a separate breakout store that is kind of my store. So it's kind of like got some of the products of some of these shows, including the online dinner party and everything. So there'll be like a cup representing this particular show and everything. Unfortunately, right now, because of the way that the network is created, I am like a junior partner in his store. So like I said, eventually I'll branch out and get my own store. But because he's got an established store, I don't have an established store. We kind of agreed to just kind of like work underneath his brand for right now.
But you've got a very good following. You've got a big following. It's growing. It's getting bigger and bigger. And I think that, even for me, I'll even reverse it in a way, right? Who I'm trying to get on shows with, it's a part of my brand as well. So You're handling yourself very well. You've got a very big reach. That's a good thing for me. I mean, that's helpful for me as well, right? Sarah Hodges, I mentioned earlier, that's good for me. Raquel is fantastic. David Wilson is fantastic. So the more that I look for different opportunities to engage, I'm also looking at their brand and saying, you know what, they're really good. You want to be connected to them. And there's that collateral benefit of Mark's a great guy. Mark's got a great following. He helps my brand, and hopefully vice versa down the road. You could say the same thing about your guests as well. So it is all about your brand. I mean, it's about your brand.
It's all about the brand, and even when it comes down to the story and everything. And by the way, I'm going to have to reach out to my friends. Speaking of folks that I have had that are part of the brand and part of the Durham community, there is a very popular film festival here called Full Frame, which is all about documentaries. So I'll definitely have to reach out to them so they can learn more about what you're doing in this particular film that you're dealing with Alzheimer's and dementia. I know they did have a couple of films that were documentary types that I think dealt with that topic, but nothing that quite sounded the way that you're approaching it. So I do know they had a few documentaries over the last several years. But what are some of the things, other than what you mentioned earlier, that you have learned about dementia and Alzheimer's that shocked you and that you were not expecting when you got into doing your research and when your family members went through this very touching situation? Because I do know what that's like when you have folks that are having conversations with you, and they actually had a guest on one of my earlier shows that talked about this, where they were having a conversation and the person thought that they were talking to their dad, even though they were clearly talking to the other person in the family. So I do know that sometimes these kind of things happen where they're reflecting back in their memory on folks that were several generations back and long gone, but they still think of them as that person. So what are some of the things you learned?
Man, there are so many things I've learned. So I think that the first piece to me is the insidious nature of the disease to the individual and the insidious nature of the disease to society. And what I mean by that is, I can't tell you the number of times where somebody will say, well, so-and-so forgot their keys. Is it or is it not dementia? All right, well, okay, so-and-so did this. Is it or is it not? Or so-and-so's old, they're supposed to do that. Or so-and-so is like this, and that just happens, right? It doesn't just, it happens in such a way that's so beneath the surface, it's so quiet until the point where somebody drives a car 100 miles away from home. Then you're like, wait a minute, that's a problem. Well, no, there were a lot of problems leading up to that. We just didn't put them together and get early help. And
Right.
So the insidious nature of how that works is the first piece of it. When I was getting my book edited, I had reached out to arguably one of the biggest or most connected cities in the country, being New York. Everybody knows where New York is, 10 million people in it. When I reached out and I referenced a silver alert, the person didn't know what a silver alert was. And I said, well, have you heard of an amber alert? Oh yeah, I've heard of an amber alert. Well, okay, a silver alert is when a basically silver-haired guy or woman goes off missing, they can't find them, they're lost. And the license plate is such and such, so be on the lookout for this car. That person has no idea where they're going. They literally left home and just started driving until they ran out of gas or crashed or whatever. That's an example of dementia-based symptoms, right? So when I said this to them, they didn't know it. I'm thinking to myself, this is the most connected city in the world. And now they will say, well, but not a lot of people drive. Yeah, there are 10 million people in the city. So I think the point that I got was just how beneath the surface it is. The other part that I also learned is the disease itself, and this is the irony of the whole disease, the disease is beneath dementia. Alzheimer's, vascular dementia, Parkinson's, there are a number of different diseases beneath dementia. It doesn't care about lanes. It doesn't care if you're Latino, Caucasian, Asian, African. It doesn't make a bit of difference. It goes and hits everybody. It's going to hit everybody. It doesn't care. It's the quietest pandemic in my lifetime. So you look up the word pandemic, crosses geographies, massive numbers associated with it. Doesn't matter ethnicity, demographic, doesn't matter any of that kind of stuff. It hits everybody globally. It's a pandemic, but it's not the pandemic you're going to hear front and center every day in the news. Yet that pandemic's been here since I had a grandfather, and it's going to be here to 2050 when it goes up to 150 million people impacted by it. It is a pandemic. So when you throw all these different things together, I start going, wait a minute, it's so quiet. People don't know if it's normal aging or not. Dementia has a number of different diseases that come off from it. You can prevent Alzheimer's in the vast majority of cases, where if you said that to the general public, hey, can you prevent? No, we're waiting for a cure. No. A cure is important, don't get me wrong. Taking control of what you can do with your kids now, if they have the markers for it, will prevent them, to a major degree, will prevent a lot of those folks from coming down with Alzheimer's. So no matter where you look, I could sit there and say, I never knew that. I never knew that. And it took me 3 years to get the book written and then adapt it for a film. I'm just learning stuff every week that I go through it.
Wow. And you actually used an interesting term calling it a pandemic, and I would agree with you. And I think that there are several pandemics that are going on in society. I would actually argue that even some of the things we're doing in terms of race relations and things of that nature are fitting in that pandemic realm as well. So I think that there are at least several pandemics that are out there. But one of the things that I've always been concerned about, and part of that is because I had a friend that passed away at a fairly young age, and I think it was because of cancer and everything. But she did go into the whole medical process. She went into the hospice. She lived in the hospice for a while, and I think she maybe even passed away when she was in the hospice. But I sometimes feel that our medical careers and our medical professions are not prepared for a lot of things. We know they've not been prepared for COVID in a lot of ways. I'm afraid that they're not prepared for aging and what goes on with aging and things of that nature. So I was wondering, would you agree with me on that we're probably not really prepared? Because I know that there are a number of, even here in Durham where I'm at, there are a number of, maybe not that many, but there are a few nursing homes and places that are elderly kind of centers. There are also apartments that are geared toward the elderly and things of that nature. But I don't know that they are necessarily truly prepared to deal with the folks as they age. And I was wondering your thoughts on that.
I think, well, in my humble perspective, as it relates to this disease and as it relates to watching what has unfolded for me, you're spot on. We are woefully underprepared for the numbers, for the care, for early screening, the mechanics to getting to the vast majority of populations who you're never going to get to unless there's a film or an outreach associated with it. So to your point, yeah, absolutely. I agree with that. So the whole crux behind the outreach for me is, you're right. If it's 150 million people by 2050 and $2 trillion of impact by 2050, 2 trillion, you're talking about more than GDPs of countries in some countries at that point, right? So when you talk about it in that context, you're saying that's a big problem. We don't have the facilities or the practitioners or the groups ready for that kind of increase in numbers. All the people now that are aging, that's going to push those numbers to triple. It's 50 million right now. It's 150 million by 2050. So to your point, no, we're not prepared to take on that amount of people. That the difference, like I said, telehealth, early screening, dementia care practitioners, researchers, wellness practitioners, like the doctor that was on yesterday, who was fantastic. You heard it directly from him. We need to change the way that we're doing things. You can't just wait for a cure. That's one thing we want to have, but you have to be able to take accountability and control now with your kids and yourself to try to stem the onflow of, or the onset of Alzheimer's.
Yeah, and I think it's, like I said, definitely Alzheimer's, definitely dementia. But one of the things that I admire, like I said, Ankit, who was definitely watching earlier, and he might still be watching, even though it's very early in the morning there in India and everything. But he is one of the junior partners within IBM TV and everything. But he is from India, and whether it's my Indian friends, whether it's some of my friends from some of the African countries, and I would argue some of the other parts of the globe, they still have this very much connected community. And I knew we had that in America way back when, but we've gotten away from that. And I think that has also hurt in the way that we treat our elderly, even if they are going through things, whether that's dementia, whether that's Alzheimer's or whatever. Because I do remember definitely being connected and having a great deal of admiration for all three of my four grandparents. And I would say all four, but one of them passed away when I was like one. So I didn't really get a chance to know him that well. But the three that I got to know, I definitely had a real good bond and a real good tie with them and everything. Might not have lived in the same neighborhood, but I enjoyed visiting them when I did go see them. And I feel that we're not doing enough of that. But one of the things I admire about some of and some people say that it's not a great quality that they have, but I admire about some of our Asian American citizens, as well as some of our Latin American citizens, is that, yeah, they might have 3 or 4 generations living in the same household, but that's a chance for you to enjoy the experience of learning from your elders. And I don't see that we have enough of that going on. I was wondering your thoughts on that.
I think that is spot on. And the funny thing that you said this, I was actually talking about this earlier today in another episode, but one of the things that I was saying was that when COVID came out, you had a number of virus experts that came on to start speaking. And there was one that I happened to listen to who was a Westerner, but had been living in the East for 20 years. So he is born and raised in the West, but then practicing over in Asia for the last 20 years. And the way that he came off and saying this, well, I'm paraphrasing, but he came off and basically said, this is not a political statement. This is just the reality of it. And the reality of it was, it will be far easier to control the spread of the disease in Asia than it will be in the Western Hemisphere. He then went on to say that it's very early on, it is a civic duty, to your point about taking care of the elderly. The elderly are revered in the Eastern cultures. They're a wealth of knowledge. They're cared for. They're respected. So when you look at the civic duty aspect about disease comes out, you wear your mask, You do it not for you, you do it for the other person that's
Right.
there. That's not a political thing. That's just what it is, right? So I completely agree that if you take that and look at it over in the West, some of the things we look at now, and I'm equally guilty of this. I'm not absolving myself from any guilt here or responsibility of it, but it's just a different mindset, I think, in the West, and certainly with the way that perhaps I was raised of what that looks like. If you look at some of the Asian cultures, the Latino communities, they do bring the folks into the house. They do take care of their elder. They do have a respect with it that I very much appreciate. And I think that as this thing gets bigger and bigger down the road, it's going to be pushed on us whether we want it to or not. And what I mean by that is that my wife has a wonderful career, does what she's done. My mother-in-law died in this house. We had her here with us at the end. And so the point is that because of the sheer numbers and the lack of facilities, it's not necessarily going to be a choice down the road. We will have to, as a society, take on that burden because you're not going to have the resources to do it or the facilities to go to do it. So it's almost going to be pushed upon us in the near term as well, which is frightening.
Yeah, it's very frightening. And one of the things we talked about earlier today on one of the other shows, which is actually, I believe it was on the Startup Wednesday show, was the fact that too often, because we had a gentleman, I think the gentleman was from India, the lady was from Florida, if I remember correctly, but they have this thing called ghost souls. Basically, they're talking about the way that the societies, whether it's personal relationships or whether it's business relationships, they get ghosted. Like they apply for a job and then they disappear. And the same thing happens in relationships. And one of the things that we were talking about, even in the context of that, was how too often we don't respect enough of our elderly, even in the workforce. Because, like I said, we know that there are a number of times that folks will be let go of their jobs, even coming back to your security field and everything, where they know that they are getting near the pension level. So they know they're getting near that age where they're going to cost the company something in the sense of their pension or their retirement fund. So they let them go early so that they save that bit of money and everything along that line. And unfortunately, that's something that I think happens too often in Western societies, not just here in the United States, but I would argue even like London and some other parts of our Western societies that exist and everything. But I don't know that we definitely have enough respect, as I said earlier, for our elderly. And that's why I appreciate both the Latin American culture, the Asian culture, and even part of my own heritage. As you know, primarily African American, I do have some Native American blood, and some of that blood definitely does honor the aspect of the respect for the elderly.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And again, I had the great fortune with my career with the company that I've worked for that I've been to Asia for, some parts of the last 2 decades. I've gone there to different countries and a world of respect for them. And I've been to South America a number of times, right? So whether it's Brazil, if it's Chile, if it's Colombia, wherever it might have been, Venezuela. So having a chance to see how they engage with their elderly and how they respect and care for them, I agree. I've got nothing else to say other than I agree because I sat there and look at it. I mean, but as it relates to this disease, I'm adamant when I say this because of the sheer numbers of people that are aging into that population group, because that they didn't have the awareness early enough on that they are going to, at some point, evolve into that disease to the 150 million. It's going to be thrust upon communities that otherwise didn't have that before. And then it's going to be a question of, okay, now, I've got it. You're buying stuff because you can't afford the other stuff at the memory care facility. So you take them in. What happens when that runs out? What happens when you have to quit a career and you have to take care? That's the kind of stuff that's going to take place over the next 20 years, 25 years.
Yeah, and I know one of the things that Dr. Richard had talked about on the show with you yesterday and everything was also us dealing with, and I alluded to it earlier, like I said, I'm the fast food king, but us also dealing with the impact that it can have even in what we eat and things of that nature. Because I do know that within the African American community, we are a little bit too quick, and probably some of us will be doing this tomorrow with the turkey, but we are a little bit too quick to eat the fried foods, which are not always the best for us and everything of that nature. So when it comes to in terms of, I know it's not necessarily your field of expertise, but when it comes to kind of the food element, I'd love to hear you share a little bit about that as well, because I do know there are a number of things that impact our living that we are not the best proponents of not fine tuning them. Like I do believe in moderation. So we don't definitely do the moderation that we should, whether that's with the fried foods or whether that's another one of my guilty pleasures, which is sweet tea, because I do love the sugar tea and the whole thing. But we don't always do these kind of things in ways that we should when we know that they're actually bad for us. But I was wondering in your research what you found out about the importance of good eating and good health in terms of the food.
Good eating is everything. And the interesting thing is what you said is that and this is the mistake I made, right? So I never did like sweet tea. My wife loves sweet tea. All right. I'm the guy that says, well, sugar is bad. So go get the diet Dr. Pepper, the diet Coke, or the diet, whatever. That's not necessarily any better. And
Right.
so the thing that I learned too late on, I'm guessing, but I drank stuff for years saying, well, I'm not going to take on the sugar, but I would drink whatever I was drinking there. But the food part of it is absolutely spot on. And so he made a great point yesterday. And again, I'm not a nutritionist or doctor in any way, shape, or form, but he made a great point that I think it was upwards of, some cultures have upwards of 70% that it was a carbs-based diet, but it was the right type of carb. It wasn't the processed starches and things like that. Yet they are very, very healthy. And so he said that it's, when you hear things like, oh, carbs are very, very bad, people automatically run to eating, all red meat and whatever else they're eating. Well, yeah, then your cholesterol just went triple or double or whatever we're up to, right? So his point was, it's not necessarily all carbs are bad. That's not the case. It's selecting the right one. And that goes back to the awareness part of it. Somebody help me understand, what does that look like? What are the right carbs and what percentages should I be taking in? So I think that when people go out and see the marketing, this has no sugar. Well, no sugar must be good. Not necessarily. It's all the other stuff that's in there that's glowing like antifreeze that we're drinking. And that can't be good. There's nothing good about that. So I think the more and more I get involved in the process about the outreach, the more I want to say, okay, I know that that's bad, but I don't have the right medical science behind it. So I'm going to get guys like Dr. Harris on there. I'm going to get nutritionists on there. I'm going to get as many people to say, these are the experts. These are the ones that want to reach the communities and say, don't do this, avoid this, try doing this. The one thing I've been religious about over most of my life is the exercise part. I have done a fair amount of exercise. I still do it today. I'm 50, this year. So from my standpoint, the exercise part has always been, okay, if I eat really bad, but then I get up the next morning, run, maybe I'm canceling out all the bad that I did. I need to be better balanced at, you do a fair amount of exercise, Dave, but you also don't necessarily eat the right things the same way. So again, I keep learning at every step of this process as we continue going down the path.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I was actually, as you were talking that, I was thinking of the importance of exercise and things of that nature, because I don't know that I do enough exercise in terms of getting out and walking and doing even like the jogging, or I'm part of a Daybreakers, which is a dance group. So I will sometimes try to do the yoga or the mindfulness practice, or sometimes they'll have like some dance things that they are having going on. But if you could speak also in your mind the importance of exercise and everything, because I do think that that's a vital part of what goes on, even in the ways that we approach aging and everything.
Completely. And I think that, one of the things they talked about, you talk about blood pressure, you talk about the endorphins, the natural endorphins that you get from running. But the other part that kind of ties together, that's the meditative aspect as well. When I'm exercising, if it's a long run, it's very therapeutic. I'm not talking, I'm not, animated. I'm not looking at 50,000 different things, not screens. Right. I'm looking at the nature in front of me and running that trail, and I'm just decompressing and getting good air and good blood flow through me. And it's almost, and I'm sure I'll probably take some grief for saying this, but it's almost a meditative state for me. I need to learn the meditative aspect of how to become better at that, because you'll hear researchers, doctors, Dr. Harris said it yesterday, they will say that exercise is great, but the meditation aspect as well has a huge value on things such as, overall wellness, but things such as dementia. But there's a way that I have to learn how to do it more effectively. I don't do it well enough. So I don't do it often enough either from that standpoint. But things such as vascular dementia, you're exercising a ton, you're getting the blood flow moving through your brain, and you're getting oxygen in. That's awesome. My heart is not working hard after the fact. It's resting. All of that is healthy for a lifestyle.
Because one of the things I'm wondering is, do you think that we don't also, and this is something we talked about on this platform, not just with exercise and dementia and Alzheimer's, but a number of things, including fiscal responsibility. But it seems to me that we should be teaching these kind of things on a very ground level, even as far, not just in your movie, but also on like the college level and definitely on the high school and the grade school level. But I feel that we don't definitely do a good enough job of preparing folks. Because like I said, there are certain inevitabilities in life. Well, I'm trying to avoid one of those inevitabilities. I'm trying to shoot for 200. I know it's next to impossible. Probably won't happen, but I'm going for it anyway. But I've just set that as my goal, because sometimes you set high goals, and if you don't make it, that just means that God will be up there laughing at me going like, I don't know why you thought you were going to make it to 200, but I can have fun while I'm enjoying the journey and everything. But that being said, I don't feel that we've learned enough on the high school level and the college level or any levels about the importance of health to our life. And I remember even back in the day when I was in school, and that would have been in the 70s, I do remember it's like some health courses. I don't even know if they offer health courses now and everything. But do you think that we're doing a good enough job of teaching our kids about health? And do you think that that's something we need to push out there? I do know that there were some presidents in the past that was kind of their platform. I think that I can't remember whether it was Clinton, definitely Carter, and a couple of others. They had that as the exercise as part of their kind of bully pulpit. They used the president to talk about exercise, but I haven't heard any of the current ones doing that as much. So do you think that that's something we need more of from a leadership standpoint?
I think everything starts at the individual level. Now, if it's a child, that means the parents. It starts at that level to take ownership of. I'll give you a great example. COVID especially. All right, so my wife is an occupational therapist. So now you've got kids that are properly distanced. They're waiting for the cars to pick them up, the whole bit. Right. She's created in this massive lot where otherwise you are standing waiting 30 minutes for your parent to get there. There's an actual occupational therapy course where they're moving, they're doing different things throughout the entire thing while they're waiting to facilitate that movement every single day. I think that it starts at the individual level, the parenting level, about what we should do every morning, the discipline when you're waking up, get the walks in, get the wellness part started. Yes, it does also require the leadership as well. There are a lot of wonderful Fortune 50 companies out there. I worked with one that was absolutely tremendous. They had their own gym inside the place, and they gave a discount and they gave incentives on insurance if you did certain things. If you walked the 10,000 steps a day, if you had the healthy watch on that showed it, if you did the gym X number of times a week, they wanted you to do this. It's beneficial to them to have healthy employees. They had this wonderful gym there. So it starts at of course, the leadership level of the country. It starts at the individual level for the parenting. It starts at the employer level. For me, it's across the board. It shouldn't be one person's responsibility. It should be a holistic engagement of wellness is good because it's great for everything. Your productivity, your mental wellness, the output of your job, being a better parent, not having dementia later on in life. I mean, there's a lot of things that we'd say it has to happen for sure.
It's interesting you said that because coming back to the Startup Wednesday show that we did earlier today, that was actually one of the things that I mentioned to those two folks that I mentioned earlier, the young lady from Florida and the gentleman who I believe was in India. But we were talking about the fact that with COVID, that's something that I felt we lost. And I mean, I know that we can't predict what's going to happen with a world pandemic and everything, but I do remember companies like Red Hat, companies like Cisco, that were very good about providing those kind of things that you were talking about, like the gyms and providing these kind of things that were encouraging us to like have a work-life balance, as the lady put it and everything. But because we're in the COVID world now, everybody's kind of glued to their computer and glued to their work, and there's not enough people doing what your wife did. Like I would like to see more people, including the corporations, like I think I remember one friend of mine on one of these shows talking about their company actually gave them some downtime where they basically said, whatever you do, you're still, getting paid, but don't get on the computer during this set time of frame and everything. And I wish that we would see more companies doing that because yes, they definitely want the productivity to go with people working during the COVID era if they're employed, because a number of people are unemployed. But if they're employed, of course, the corporations want them working. But I feel that too often when they were in the same confines, meaning they were in the same building or they were going to the same building, if they were doing that work commute thing, that they at least were given space, whether that was a gym, whether that was a daycare, whether that whatever form they might have done. But because everybody is attached to their workspace, their computer and everything, I don't think that the corporations are doing enough of that right now. That's my personal opinion, but I would like to see more corporations trying to find a way. And I know it's harder in the corporate world, but like shucks, if you can have a whole Zoom party around dancing, which is what Daybreakers does, I don't see why you can't have a Zoom party where they give you an hour and let you have a dance off. That's a corporate type deal.
It's about being creative. And I think that, again, it starts at the highest level of the organization, the leadership level of the organization. I happen to work for a tremendous one. The leadership level, their view on wellness and health, especially during COVID, starts at the top. That is cascaded. My manager is the exact same way. And they do encourage, hey, listen, close the thing for a minute. It is not harmful to walk outside around your block. You're by yourself. You have plenty of distance. The fresh air is there. Disconnect, get the vitamin D, get the sun in you, the whole bit. Go out there and get that, turn that thing off. And they've been tremendous about that. I think that if you start at the leadership level and watch how that cascades throughout the organization, you're with a good group. I do think that if you look at a lot of the Fortune 50 companies, I look at the progressive companies, a lot of data center companies are really good about affording that work-life balance. They're great at it. They were doing that before the pandemic, and they're certainly encouraging more of that now that the pandemic is there. So I think it is there. I think that, again, and I'll put this back onto myself, there's got to be some accountability and responsibility. They're affording all of these avenues, whether it's a reduction in insurance and turning off your computer and getting out. They're doing that. Then it's incumbent upon me as an individual and having my own accountability to go out and go do it and hold myself accountable and be disciplined with that as well. That's the part where it can be easy for, I'm not blaming anybody, but it can be easy for some to simply say, well, I just didn't get up and do it. Your company afforded it. They've promoted it. They've advocated for it. They want you to be healthy and well to get through this together. And then the rest of your life, you got to start at the individual level. They've got to do it. Take accountability.
Yeah, I agree with you. They definitely have to do it and things along that line. Now, I know that one of the things that comes up in conversations, even with aging and everything, is what folks' goals are as they age and as they get older and everything. So I was just wondering, now you have a wife that you described who's an occupational therapist. I think you have kids as well. What kind of messages have you given them? I'm not in the kid category, but I do have nephews, so I'll probably have to have that conversation with them unless I hook up with a young lady that's got kids, and then that's a whole other conversation. But that being said, what kind of conversation have you been having with them about how you would like to be treated as you move from past the 50s? And by the way, I'm late 50s into like the 70s and the 80s and later into retirement. Because actually, I'm thinking, I don't know that my dad's ever going to retire. And he just turned 80, but he's enjoying his artwork and enjoying the passion that he has with the different things that he's involved in. And I know some other folks that are in their 80s and 90s and are still very much enjoying their work. So if you're able to do it, then I don't think you need to go into a nursing home or anything of that nature. But I was just wondering, what kind of conversation were you having with your own family in regards to that? And how do you encourage people to have that conversation, even to having conversations about knowing some warning signals about Alzheimer's and dementia and what they might do if they see those warning signals?
Yeah. And so I think that, again, any parent that's out there is going to say there's nothing, he is not going to say anything revolutionary here or anything great. I'm going to say the basic things that people have heard 10 million times. The problem is trying to execute on what you're saying. So I will say that my wife is really good about modeling what it is you want them to see, because they will look, they'll observe, they'll watch. I had no clue what triangulation was until I had kids. And so invariably one child comes up and says, hey, I want to do this. Well, you can't do that. And here's why. They go right to the other parent, ask it. They work both ways. They both come back and I'm like, how did you just get that? I said not to do that. So I think the modeling piece is hugely important. What is it you want them to look at and observe, expect them to do what it is you're doing? I've got to be better at doing that. As a parent, got to be better at modeling all the time. I think being consistent in the approach as it relates to wellness starts from day one. Wellness starts when you get out of the bed. So one of the things that we both are very good encouraging my kids, get out and let's move. Let's get out and walk. They find walking boring. So they love playing football. All right, pick up the football. I'll play catch while we're walking this entire route. So you can run, do patterns. I'll throw it to you, but we're going to walk that 3 miles. So you get them to do what you wanted them to do. They like to play football. So let's combine both things and do that. As much as you can get where it's away from screens. And I know I'm going to be eviscerated for probably saying this, but I think that too much screen time for kids, I don't know anybody that's going to argue that that's a good thing. I don't buy into the argument that it's a good thing to have more and more screen time. I don't know what the benefit is, but that's just me. So I think that limiting the amount of screen time that they have, TV, if it's an iPad, that to me is a huge push. I'm not a big screen person to begin with. I don't want to be, and I don't want them to be doing that either. So if they see me on a screen right now, it's, well, you were on there for an hour, I get an hour. No, wait, hang on a second. And then there's the modeling, right? So it's like, how do I say, well, no, I can do it, but you can't do it. So try to model it as best I can. Try to be consistent in messaging from one parent to the next parent to the same child. And then just saying, look, I am getting older. It's more difficult for me to do the things that I did when I was 40 than where I'm at right now. It's going to be really difficult to do those same things, I would guess, when I'm 60, if I'm lucky to get that point. But that's the one key thing. The one thing I'll say is that the females are far better than what I've seen about advocating and taking care of the aging parent than what I've looked at. And that's not I hope that's not taken wrong by anybody, and I'm included in that same group, but I can tell you that just observing how they've cared for the aging parent, who's thrust into that role as caregiver when you've got 5 kids and one happens to be the female and there are 4 boys. The female is the one that is stepping up to the plate and actually doing that. I think that I've got to be better at modeling that. No, it's a team effort. I've got to be equally good at that. And so when it comes time for you to take care of me, I've got 2 boys. I don't have any girls. One of y'all is going to have to step up to the plate. Both of y'all are going to step up to the plate. And that's what I hope comes across to those guys as I get older.
No, I agree, and definitely, they do not necessarily know how old you are when you're getting older and everything. Because I remember last Christmas around this time, so it was actually around December and everything. So it was after Christmas. I went to spend some time at the beach of North Carolina with my dad and his other half, and of course I was there with my brother and my 2 nephews, and then dad's other half, their kids have kids as well. So there was like some kids that were in that, we'll say 9 to 15-year-old or 9 to 16-year-old category. And I just remember as soon as they, because I do not do the whole driving thing, but as soon as they dropped me off at the beach house, then Julius and Langston were grabbing me saying, "Hey, Uncle Mark, it's time for us to go play football." And I'm sitting there going like, I just got here. I'm not exactly a spring chicken, but I did manage to get involved in the game. I think the team that I was on with that particular nephew and everything, I think that we won. It was a close match, but I did get involved. So they do not care the fact that you might be a little bit older and a little bit slower in step. They just wanted to get you involved in the game as soon as you stepped on that beach sand. So I know we were involved in that game for a good hour or so.
It's funny you said that because my kids are always, is it tackle or is it touch today? I'm like, I'm not playing tackle, man. I can't even get up off the ground. We're touch at this point and we'll go from there. But yeah, but they think that you're just a big kid and they expect you to be able to do that. And I try the best of my ability, but yeah, I mean, it hurts to get out of bed sometimes. So
no, like I said, and I'm glad it was not tackle. It was definitely touch, and I'm glad it was not tackle because tackle would have been hurting me way too much. So when they said it was a touch game, I was like, all right, we can at least masquerade like we know what we're doing. And I never claimed to have been a big football player in high school or anything of that nature, but at least I was able to get engaged in the game. And they definitely, like you said, they just saw another kid popping up. Did not matter that you're almost 40 years older than them and everything, but because my brother had his kids late in life. So it doesn't matter that I'm almost 40 years older than them. They was like, hey, it's somebody else that we can play with and engage with and everything. So that's the way that they treat the whole agent system.
I tried as soon as they say we're going to play football, I say I'm all-time quarterback. I say it every time. I'm like, no rushing. I get to stand back there in the pocket, throw the ball day long. Then it's good. But if they say, no, I'm quarterback today, and I'm the receiver, I'm whatever I am at that point, I'm like, this is not going to be good.
It's not going to be a good ending. No. I do have to give the clues once more to the other person, so I'm getting ready to run a couple of those across the screen. And this is somebody from the acting world, but they said, stuttering is painful. In Sunday school, I tried to read my lessons, and the children behind me were falling on the floor with laughter. So we talk about folks that have gone through hardships. This was a particular person that went through a hardship and all of that. They also said, trying to make someone fall in love with you is about as pointless as trying to control who you fall in love with. So I'm sure that you probably can relate to that, having been with that wife of yours for a number of years and having those kids and everything. So I do know that sometimes folks do try to create whatever their opportunity is and not realize that that might be a little bit on the pointless side. And they had a similar quote, which is, there is a fine line between love and nausea. So they said that there's a fine line between love and nausea. And then this is what they said about theater. It says, you weren't going to theater to change the world, but you had a chance to affect the world, the thinking and the feelings of the world. So that sounds like something along the lines of what your film is all about. So it definitely says that they might be agreeing that this nationally known filmmaker and actor and everything with some of the things that you're saying. And this is what they said about the African American population. They said, we used to be shiftless and lazy. Now we're fearsome and awesome. I think the black man should take pride in that. So that ought to let you know that they are an African American actor and all of that. And apparently they're a baseball fan, because they said, but baseball has marked the time. This field, this game is part of our past. It reminds us of all that once was good and what could be again. So they definitely are a fan of baseball. And this is probably the best clue. I am probably best known as the voice of Darth Vader from Star Wars and Mufasa in The Lion King. So hopefully folks can realize that clue and realize who that person is and everything. But that is a little bit about our second person and all of that. So definitely, I think they had some great quotes about their life and all of that, and some amazing quotes that they shared with us in that regard. So definitely know that a lot of folks are probably sitting there going like, I wonder who that could possibly be and all of that. But I'm thinking that David's already got in his mind who that person was. And the first person, to give another clue about the first person, their parents was German Jews who had left Germany because of Nazism, and during World War II in England, his father was considered an enemy alien and spent 18 months on the Isle of Man. And after the war ended, the family lived in England until 1953. Then they immigrated to the United States. So I don't know, David's giving that look on his face like he might have an idea who that person is as well. So I'll ask him at the absolute end if nobody goes on the clues or before he departs, because I know sometimes folks have to depart before the show ends at 7. But if he has to depart, then I might ask him beforehand and everything if he's got any idea. And I've got a third guest, a mystery guest as well. And that one, I don't think anybody is going to be getting or anything of that nature. But while I'm thinking about it, if somebody was watching right now and they were involved or wanted to be involved in the film, what does David need right now from the film world? I know you definitely mentioned the film festival, so I know you would love to be shown at, say, Full Frame, which is here in Durham, or at Sundance. I'm also thinking that you probably need investors, because every filmmaker needs a good investor and things along that line. But what are some of the things that the film is missing right now that you would like to have happening? And also, who are some of the people that have inspired you in terms of your own filmmaking and in terms of your own creative work? Like I said, I know that definitely seems like you are very close to your wife, so I'm sure she's an inspiration, but I'd love to know your creative inspirations as well.
So I think that for me, so let's talk about what's needed first. I think that I've got a fantastic female director. Her name is Sarah T. Schwab. And again, I would encourage people to go out there and look at what she has done in the past. You know, one of the things that when I brought this thing together was there were two pieces that I wanted to make sure were part of the outreach. The first was the gender equality piece. So if you can look at every Fortune 500 company, Fortune 100 companies, and everybody's very good about saying we have gender equality. We want to make sure we're pushing for that. I feel very strongly that we want to do that and be very explicit about that and show, hey, look, we want to promote Sarah T. Schwab that's out there. And during that process of the filmmaking, she's going to mentor aspiring female directors throughout that production. So they'll be on the set. They'll be part and parcel of that overall production. So gender equality is one of the big pieces for me. So we have a director, we have an executive producer, I'm a producer. So that the actual positions, the script is done. So all of that stuff is there. I think the key pieces for me, you mentioned investing. The really cool thing about this film is sponsored by the Film Collaborative. What does that mean? That means that it is a tax deductible donation. So assuming that you're part of a Fortune 100 company and your corporate social responsibility outreach may be focused on environment, has nothing to do with dementia. So the whole company is focused on the environment. That's great. That's applauded. That's wonderful. It does not preclude the CEO or a senior member of the board from donating to dementia and writing that off as a tax burden. It's a donation. You get to write it off. This film also does have an investment deck as well. So people could then say, I'm interested in making money in the film. I want to be part of something very big in this outreach. I want to invest it. So there's an investment deck as well that they can do too. So I think funding is a primary part right now. We have a very good progress to date. Still looking for more, obviously, but I think the key thing for me is it is a Film Collaborative sponsored event. That is 99% different from all the other films that are out there. So that's the first thing to call out there. As far as inspiration, and this is where Sarah and I really work well together. I'm a super abstract writer. And the best way to describe that is, and especially when it comes to dementia, I can create imagery and take pages to describe what this imagery looks like to the person suffering from it. There are a lot of changes in different textures and things like that. That's not going to resonate on the stage. You're going to have far too many changes on the set to make that work in a stage environment. It is absolutely suited to a film because you can cut the different scenes, you can do different things to bring the imagery in where it works. My abstract writing and her very constructive process. She's very methodical about, nope, the cadence has to be like this for the sets, the scenes. She's very good about taking the book and putting those markers in so it comes together in a very, very good way. So abstract writing for me, very, very methodical and analytical and process oriented for her, which brings this thing together very seamlessly. I like writers I like the book 1984. I like H.G. Wells as a writer. So The Island of Dr. Moreau, good examples, things like that. That's what I aspire to write like. I like that creative aspect to it.
Those are some great folks to be admiring. I was definitely a fan of George Orwell in 1984. I think he might have just got the year wrong in terms of like what was going to happen. It might have happened in 2020 or 2018 instead of 1984. But a lot of the things that were in that book are things that are happening now. So like I said, he might have just had the year wrong and it didn't quite happen in 84, even though there were some crazy things that were going on in 84 as well. Because I remember that was the years of my college years and everything. And I think we had just dealing with Reagan and everything. So he might have had part of it right, but in terms of the full 84 aspect, I think he was just off by 20 or 30, 40 years or something like that. But a lot of the ideas that are in that book are definitely featured. Now, one of the things, as you were talking about the kind of the ways that your film is being funded and the support you're getting, that I was curious about, is a lot of the diseases that are out there have like their face of the disease that is somebody that is a celebrity that has gone through it. I mean, I think of like diabetes and the way that B.B. King represented diabetes. Yeah. I think of Jerry Lewis and the way he represents multiple MS and everything of that nature. So I think of folks like that and everything. But I don't know that there's necessarily a face of dementia, even though I know dementia has impacted Hollywood, impacted the music industry, impacted a number of other things. So one of the things I was curious about is, do you think that there's a reason for that, or to why there hasn't been a face of that image from a standpoint? Because I do know, because I've done enough reading of some of our famous folks and everything, that some of them had family members or had their own incidences where it was something that was impacting them, and they are part of our media community, meaning the Hollywood community or the music industry or a number of other things. Because I have read, I can't think of any off the top of my head, but I know I've read some that talked about that being an impact in their life, but they haven't had that face of the person.
Yeah, and I think that, so you look at Maria Shriver is a great example. So she has arguably done a whole ton of work with alts.org and Alzheimer's as a whole. Seth Rogen is front and center to the overall awareness portion of Alzheimer's as well. But again, his parents, I think it was his mom, if I'm not mistaken, but one of his parents for sure suffered from it. He got very active in that. He's got a thing called Hilarity for Charity, where he runs it every year and focuses on the awareness part of it. But it is, I mean, when somebody passes away, then Malcolm Young, AC/DC guitarist, died. They were very quiet as far as the band as a whole. They wouldn't say much about what they did and their personal lives and things like that. But I remember reading in between one of their last albums that they were preparing for the tour, and I'd heard something. He began forgetting songs he had played for 35 years. I was like, that, I mean, you played for 35 years. That's like second nature. That's like crazy. And so it became very quiet where you didn't know what they were doing. Then all of a sudden, very quickly, 3 years later, like, I haven't heard the guy's name. Then you found out he was dying of dementia. And then he passed away, right? And so it's almost like that. Michael J. Fox does a great job with Parkinson's. Right. Parkinson's is a dementia-related disease. And so he is the face of Parkinson's when you're looking at that right now. Does a great job of raising awareness and speaking to everybody. But you're right. I mean, Maria Shriver, Seth Rogen. Beyond that, I don't know who would really be considered the face of it. Estee Lauder, the Lauder family, they're very big into that because one of their family members, I think it was the mom that passed away from it, but they're very big into the philanthropic portion of that as well. But again, you wouldn't see their name as being, talking out in the open in public about it on LinkedIn or Facebook or things like that. But I don't really know who I would say is the face. And I'd say Seth Rogen, to me, would be the closest face to it right now.
Yeah, I would agree with you on that. And you're right about the Parkinson's connection, because the other face of Parkinson's that was out there, other than the one that you just mentioned, and it was out there for a number of years, was Muhammad Ali, the greatest and everything. He was definitely involved with Parkinson's. And definitely, that's another thing that I was curious about, if you could talk to in your research, because there are different levels of things, and sometimes we throw them all in the same bucket. And I know that there's a difference between Alzheimer's, a difference between dementia, a difference between dementia and Parkinson's. So there are a number of these things that are all kind of cognitive diseases or the cognitive things that are happening with aging and with our cognitive awareness, but we don't always put them in the same category. And I've also sometimes heard people tie dementia in to things that are also going on in our life that aren't necessarily always aging results. Like I know that sometimes they'll tie it into the whole autism spectrum because some of the symptoms are also similar to what folks go through that are having different things going on with autism. Like I have a form of autism called dysgraphia, which is like another form of dyslexia. It just means that part of the reason I don't drive, but like, you tell me to turn left and turn right, it might take me a split second longer to figure out which way is left and which way is right than the average person.
So it is interesting you said that, because again, when I just thought dementia was it was it. That was but I was like, no, wait a minute. There's vascular dementia. There's Lewy body dementia. There's Parkinson. There's it goes on and on. I just didn't know that there were that many diseases when it came to dementia. And so I think the first recognition to me was, what does it mean if you've got Lewy body versus vascular versus whatever? And the interesting thing is about my mother-in-law, this is a woman who very sharp, spoke very well, a church going woman. So the part of the brain that affected her, she would say things that she would never have said before. She would misspeak on certain things she never would have misspoken on before. So it was because it was that part of the brain that was being impacted that was where the cognitive decline went. And she would say and do things that were not necessarily reflective of the way that she was. It could be entirely different for Lewy body dementia. It could be entirely different for some other disease. But what was interesting was towards the end of her life, some of the stuff that was prescribed, for instance, was for a tremor. Now, I would have assumed that a tremor would be for something like, say, Parkinson's, right? And the doctors, well, yeah, you're just treating symptoms now, depending on what part of the brain it actually gets to at this point. You're simply treating different symptoms. And yes, that is a drug that would treat tremors in different types of diseases. But yet, it just, when it goes and goes and grows and grows, it eventually takes over portions of the brain and starts impacting everything. Your ability to breathe, to swallow, to chew, to figure out how to eat a hamburger. Everything then begins to go away at that point. So, yeah, it was crazy.
Yeah, it sounds like that would be totally different, and a lot of folks would probably be sitting there going, like, not understanding the connections and the ways that there are so many different forms of dementia and Alzheimer's and different other things. And now, did you go through a lot of that same thing that I had talked about earlier, where you were being mistaken for other folks? And how did you deal with that? Because I know sometimes that one of the things that my mom had told me when she was going through with her aunt, which is my great aunt, was that, they just kind of like tried to, for lack of a better term, played along with it and everything, didn't really try to correct the person. Whereas I've known some other folks that have said that's not the best approach, because you should try to correct them and let them know that they are talking to the person that's actually in the current reality and not the reality that they perceive the reality to be. So in your own ways, when you were dealing with this, how did you cope with it?
So now the interesting thing about us during COVID, all right, so you're gonna have to rewind before March. So before March, there was the last interaction I had wasn't recognized. It was kind of a familiarity thing. You play along with the discussion that's going on. You'll answer the same questions, multiple times. But then when COVID hit, nobody else was allowed to see her. So you could only have my wife that went in there and actually saw her mom. So there was no other engagement with other family members. So I don't know what that looked like towards the end when she was brought here during the last week. She wasn't even awake at that point. So from that standpoint, I didn't have that. How did it change over the course of the last 6 months or 4 months of COVID? I didn't have that. I couldn't tell you what it looked like. I saw what it looked like beforehand. And I think that the pieces that I saw were difficulty in swallowing, difficulty in maneuvering like a thing like a burger. Walking was way different than what it was before. Spine curved. I mean, it was just a very different looking. It wasn't the same woman in any way, shape, or form. Now, the interesting thing about her was her father. So my wife's grandfather also got diagnosed during the same time.
Oh, wow.
They both had it. The grandfather, because it was a different type, it was Alzheimer's, he died while his daughter was regressing very slowly. She never knew her father died. So she died without knowing that her father was dead. So it went 6 months before he passed and before she ended up passing. So she never found out that her father died. Because that's an example of something that they would say, if you tell her something like that, you have no idea how it's going to be received. You'll have the same conversations over and over again. So she never knew.
So she never knew at all that had happened and everything. And now you said you did or did not have that experience of trying to I guess try to put yourself in that shoe of if they were calling you, or I guess that would be your wife's situation. Did she actually, if she was being called the daughter, even though, or the mother, even though she was the daughter, did she just kind of like roll with it, or did she try to correct her mother from what she told you?
No, she would roll with it. And I think that, well, it depends on the circumstance. She would help finish an answer for her. She wouldn't necessarily correct on something that was misspoken. If it was a different family member, she would not do that. But if it was something like she was fumbling to figure out, what this implement was that she was holding, and she would get very mad and she would say, "Oh yeah, Mom, it's a pen," and then it would help her kind of work through it. She would say that this could be a hammer or something. "Oh no, Mom, not, that's a pen," and that could be received very, very differently during the part, depending upon what part of the month it was. I mean, meaning more time went by, the more impact on the brain. I saw the connection for me was like swearing as an example. That would never have come out ever before. But because of the part of the brain was being impacted, there were different things being said that she would be, quite frankly, appalled by. So as it got worse and worse, then there was no speech. It just wasn't there anymore. So there wasn't anything that could be produced at that point.
Gotcha. And if you're thinking about some of the other projects, and like I said, I know this is a very special one, and hopefully it's going to get all kinds of worldwide distribution. And I'm hoping that our folks that are watching, including my friends from South Africa, because I know that Alexandria May does a show and is involved in the music community there in South Africa, and she does her show on Sunday afternoons. But we have folks from Malaysia, from Europe, and a number of other places. So hopefully this will get some worldwide play and everything. But after this film is done and you're looking at your next projects, what are some of the other things that you're hoping to tackle in terms of other issues or other projects that you want to work on? Because then the next one maybe is not going to be an issue project. Maybe it's going to be something very lighthearted and have nothing to do with a very serious issue like what this is all about.
Well, and so I wrote a comedic vignette book before this one, and so I did my comedy thing. I liked it. It was fun. It was good. This was a passion to get this one out. I'm equally passionate about autism. So I'm already have a portion of my next book already crafted around the theme of autism and a redemptive factor in that story as well. So I focus on things that I'm very passionate about, that I want to make a change in. So I want to bring visibility to, more awareness to it, a different voice to it, a story that has not been told to it. So I'm already working down that path. The interesting thing about the movie right now, though, is the book. When I wrote the book, I had people from Malaysia buying it. I had people from Ireland buying it, from Brazil buying it, Mexico, and then of course the U.S., Ireland. So I think that one of the things that I found very quickly was that there was a connective aspect of the disease where it doesn't matter where you are. If I didn't speak any foreign language, or I couldn't speak your language, but you were watching my film, you couldn't speak mine, you would know what that person was suffering from by watching what was happening to them. And there's an odd connectivity between I empathize with you, I sympathize with you. I may not speak a word of what it is that you speak, but I see what you're going through. I see your journey. There is a connective bonding aspect to that. And that's why I think this film, and it's called Before the Ashes Fall. I mean, they can Google the book and the same name, but you can look at that. And when you see that, there is a connective element. And I think that would transfer across the globe, quite frankly.
No, definitely. I agree with you that would probably transfer across the globe. You mentioned the other one that doesn't so much deal with Alzheimer's and with dementia, but with the autism. And I was wondering if you could just share a little bit about what that project is going to look like, because that is another important issue that is touching a lot of folks' lives, including some folks that I know, including even having autistic folks have to go into the employee, their work environment. Because I know a good friend of mine is definitely autistic, and sometimes we have to have conversations with them around boundaries and things of that nature, because they are autistic and sometimes they're not quite sure as to how to deal with the boundaries that are placed on them. But they're also one of the best workers at this particular company, which is a test grading company that I work with in Durham. So they can be some of the best workers, but sometimes you have to have conversations with them around space and some of the other things that autistic folks deal with. So I just wondered if you could share a little bit about why that is such a passionate project for you as well.
Well, my wife's an OT. So my wife has been treating spectrum issues for the last 20 years. And so I think that when you, and not names or anything like that, but when you look at some of the people that you're engaging with and you understand some of the stories that are behind it, you understand the struggle behind it, you understand what she's done for her whole career in working with that. It's not just one thing. There are a number of things that can go from this end of the spectrum the whole way to the full gambit. But I think that in the workplace, especially, that's why I think STEM is very important. Science, technology, I mean, that portion of it is great. And there are a lot of, Dell is a great example. Dell has an outreach, their CSR deals with STEM, and they do some fantastic work in the community. They do great work with their engineers and the programs that they bring in for that, the education behind that, the development of it. For me, it's more about the creative part where it's an inclusivity thing. So the story that I'm trying to bring to light is I'm going to tell a story about somebody that's been kind of pushed off to the side, left alone on their own. They take a job as a caretaker in a cemetery. They have conversations with those people in the cemetery that's his friends, and he gets to know them and their stories, and he's speaking on behalf of them. It's got this metaphysical kind of aspect to it, but he's perfectly lucid with everybody in that cemetery. They understand everything that he is saying, which he never had in the other part of his life. So it kind of comes full circle. But my point with that is that there are people for everybody and there are things for everybody, and you can feel a value for everybody. That's kind of the theme that I'm working towards right now. And I'm a pantser, and I'm not a plotter. And what that means is I have kind of a theme, and I start writing, and that thing takes a right turn on its own, and I start following it, and back and forth it goes till it gets to the landing point. Then I write the ending back at the beginning. And that's where Sarah she's like, how did you come up with that part? I didn't intend to. I just started writing, and the creative process led me to that. So that's a very long-winded way of saying I have a theme of how I'd like this story to go. And the theme is about inclusivity, and it's about the dialogue and perfect lucidity with different people that nobody else will ever talk to again. They're there forever in that same confined space. And that to me is just a kind of a redemptive factor for him before the end of the story.
It sounds like you've got some great and amazing stories and everything. And I know we're going to wrap up very shortly and everything, but I do have to get out my clues and everything before we wrap up at the 7 o'clock hour. But I need to get in the clues for this, and nobody's jumping on it, so I'll let you answer if you can figure it out for this particular person and the one that I think nobody will know. But this is the one that I think folks should be able to know. In 1974, he played Lenny Small in a Broadway production of Mice and Man alongside his estranged father. And yes, his father was estranged from him and everything of that nature. And for his portrayal of the boxer Jack Jefferson in The Great White Hope, he became just the second African American to be nominated for the Best Actor Award at the Academy Award. So he did win an Academy Award for that great role and everything along that line. And in 1991, he won the Emmy for lead actor in a drama series for his role in Gabrielle's Fire, and he won a second Emmy that year for Best Supporting Actor in a miniseries for By Dawn's Early Light. So that is for that particular person and everything. And last but not least, the Screen Actor Guild awarded him a Lifetime Achievement Award in 2008. In 2011, he was awarded a Lifetime Achievement Oscar by the Academy. And last but not least, speaking of folks with diseases, he also has type 2 diabetes, which was diagnosed back in the 1990s. So before we get back into more conversation, and of course, I've got two more clues that I need to reveal, and before I reveal the particular picture of this particular person, David, do you have any idea who that particular gentleman might be and everything of that nature?
I can see him with his glasses on, and I can see him, Earl Jones. Earl Jones.
That is it.
Yeah.
None other than James Earl Jones. James Earl Jones is that particular person in the glasses and all of that. So James Earl Jones is that great actor known for the voice of being Darth Vader and all of that. So he's definitely known as the voice of Darth Vader. So that is one of them. I think I'll get to the other one before I get to the more obscure one, because I think that the folks should be able to figure that one out as well. So let me get to my news person, because this is somebody known in the field of news and all. And of course, he's been definitely a great newsmaker in the world and all of that. So I'm going to give some clues that are probably just a little bit too obvious and all of that. But one of them is his quote, which I loved about journalism. Journalism has become a sort of competitive screeching. What is trivial but noisy and immediate takes providence over important matters that develop over time. So he definitely said that about journalism and all of that. So he was definitely not feeling the whole Fox News, MSNBC kind of thing. And he had this quote to let you know a little bit about his own faith and everything. But it was a quote that he had about things related to politics and all of that. So see if I can get that quote up about his quote that dealt with Moses, because he did have a quote that dealt with Moses and everything along that line. So I'm gonna see if I can't find that one. But while I'm looking for that, he also said this, which is adjust a rigid standard of morality in your life, and if periodically you fail, as you surely will, adjust your life, not the standard. So he was definitely telling folks to adjust their life and not necessarily the standards. And I agree with him on that and everything along that line. So he was definitely sharing that. And here's what he said about Moses. He said, when Moses brought down from Mount Sinai, were not the 10 suggestions, they are commandments, are not were. So he was playing around with words, being a wordsmith and all of that. So definitely he was involved in the field of words and all of that. So definitely folks may be able to figure out who he is in that. And another clue, along with Charles Osgood, he covered the assassination of President John F. Kennedy in 1963. So he's definitely been in the field for a number of years. And this one is, I think, the giveaway, but we'll just give it anyway. When the Iran hostage crisis broke out in November of 1979, ABC News started a broadcast, the Iran crisis, American held hostage, covering the number of days that the American hostages were held. So he was definitely involved in that particular event as well. So as I said earlier, he's definitely interviewed a number of great folks, and he's also even done work for NPR and a number of other outlets and things of that nature. And in 2007, he was presented an Emmy Lifetime Achievement Award. So definitely that's some of the things. And he just got way too many awards and all of that. They include 41, and I did say 41 Emmy Awards, 10 Overseas Press Club Awards, 8 Peabody Awards, the DuPont Columbia Award, the Gold Baton for Nightline's week-long series broadcast from South Africa, and those are just some of the awards that he has been part of. So you have any idea who that particular person might be, who in 1992 was inducted into the TV Academy Hall of Fame? So do you have any idea which news person that might be as well? So we do know that they're involved in the news field. David, you got any ideas who that might be?
Brokaw.
Close, but no cigar. That is the world famous, none other than Ted Koppel. So Ted Koppel has won all of those kind of awards and all of that. So, but Brokaw would be close as well. But Ted Koppel was who that particular person was. I do have one more because I try to have at least one international person. So I'll bring up the clues on my international person in a little bit. But definitely been having this great conversation with you, David. And I'm glad that we connected through none other than Raquel. And she definitely is a light, as I've called them, to the world, of providing some great inspiration and connecting folks. So she does a great job of connecting. So that being said, I was wondering if you could share with folks, both with the field work you're doing, the security work, and some of the other things, the importance in your mind of LinkedIn and networking, because I am a big proponent of LinkedIn and networking, and I know you are as well. So I'd love to hear your thoughts as to why that is an important element in your life.
It is not even important. It's critical. It's mission dependent, quite frankly. And I mean that by, I'm not a writer by trade. I'm not a writer by education. And so to get the word out there about what the film looks like, to get connected to people like yourself that have a great brand, great network, far bigger than mine, you have to have that. If you don't have that, then it's going to take you forever. I mean, so for me, getting your brand out there, having a chance to use your voice, connecting with people like yourselves, like Raquel, who's been nothing short of amazing for me personally, they're going to help me get to where I need to get to. I could definitely, there's no way I could do that on my own. There's not even a question. I met my director on LinkedIn. I met you on LinkedIn. So there are a lot of people that I met on LinkedIn to put this thing together. Dr. Harris that you met yesterday, that would be what I'd love to have part of the outreach. He was on LinkedIn. So all the pieces that I'm putting together for something that will go global was based on this platform that we're talking through right now. So for me, I have no other way to do it. I don't know how else to do it.
Yeah, I agree, and it's definitely a very powerful platform and everything. And too often, it's not being used as much as it should be. But I'm a big proponent of LinkedIn, also a big proponent of the actual platform that we're on, which is StreamYard. They do some great things, and I know that they've done some amazing things as well. And of course, the fine folks at IBM TV. So there are some of these new platforms that are being created, and I'm glad to see that these new platforms are giving people like yourself a voice that is a chance to be heard. Because too often we hear the same voices all the time, and we don't get a chance to hear new voices and new styles of voices. So I'm glad that we're able to create opportunities for folks to be heard that aren't usually heard, and a chance for them to put out their message and to be heard and to reach out to folks that they might need to reach also. I had asked you earlier about your influences, and I was just curious, are there any documentary filmmakers? Like, I am a big fan. I used to attend regularly. This past year, it did go virtual, but and the history, I would always go to the Full Frame, used to be called the Double Take Film Festival and everything. And of course, I've been to the film festival in Miami, excuse me, the American Black Film Festival. So there are a number of film festivals that I've been to, but I do have a great deal of respect for documentary filmmakers, be that folks like, I'm trying to think of Williams' last name, or Randall Dotton, or a number of others. And of course, everybody knows D.A. Pennebaker and all of that. And of course, Ken Burns. But I was just wondering, who are some of the filmmakers that have inspired you and that are filmmakers, documentaries, type filmmakers that you really admire? Or do you even watch a lot of documentaries? Or is this a whole new thing to you?
You just gave me the free out right there when you just said that, because I'm not good. My wife is really good about those, and she's very good about documentaries. If she sees something, she would introduce it to me. I'd watch, and I think it's great. I am not good with. I just don't. I don't watch a lot of documentaries. I would prefer more of, for instance, I like George Orwell. So his writing makes me want to do something. It's really good about H.G. Wells. His writing makes me want to do something. Thomas Hardy, his writing makes me want to do something. So when I read a writer, something they put down on paper, it's like there's a permanent aspect to that where I gravitate to that. I then try to see how they wove the story in around that. If there's a political undertone that they're trying to make their point with, as well as 1984 and things like that, or Animal Farm, things like that. I see the brilliance behind. They're telling a story, it's an allegory, but they wove that political piece underneath, with Stalin being one of the characters in Animal Farm. I think stuff like that is really cool. So the documentaries are fantastic, but for me personally, I see it as very immediate. It's there. I've looked at it. There's a tremendous amount of work and effort put behind it, and the creativity behind it. But I see the writing more as an inspiration for me personally than I do the actual documentary. That's not a knock in any way, shape, or form. I just don't watch enough of them to give you an educated response on it.
Yeah, no problem. Like I said, I definitely have seen some that were very amazing and different styles, everything from covering world issues to like issues like in the environment or a number of other things. So I agree that they definitely give you a chance to hear a news story or a story of issue oriented, but not necessarily from the news point of view of like what you would get from a 60 Minutes or from the kind of like news kind of feel. So they do get a more personal touch, for lack of a better term. So they give you more of a personal touch from what I've seen of the better documentaries. And I do agree with you about George Orwell and H.J. Wells and a number of others that have told great stories that are kind of documentary in nature, but they might be classified as science fiction or fantasy. And I don't even always have to agree with them. Like, I know I went to a Jesuit university, that being Marquette, and they definitely had us read C.S. Lewis. And to me, C.S. Lewis, some of his views were a little bit on the conservative side, but I could also see some of the way that the story structure was put out there. So like I said, I found him as an individual, and even some of the things that he put in the book, to be maybe on the opposite side of a George Orwell and everything of that nature, but I could still relate to the way he told the story. I might not agree with everything that he said in the story, but I can relate to the way he told the story. But
that's a great point. It just struck me as you were saying that. But Woody Harrelson just had a documentary out recently that he was narrating it, but it was about the environment, about carbon in the air, and how soil can actually absorb it and be good for the air and good for the soil, the whole bit. But he did that. I couldn't tell the name of it, but I watched it. Like, that was really good. That was really neat. I learned from it. But yeah, you made a great point there. I can read something about whether it's a very right kind of writer, it's a very left writer. I may not agree with it. I may sit there and say, that's a great story. And I like how they put their point across in the story and take it for that and say, that was great. That was brilliant. I don't have to agree with it, but that was brilliant. And I enjoy that part of writing and about film and things like that. So it's all good. I like the creative part of it. I love the creativity part of it.
The creativity part is really important and everything and all of that. And I'm going to give you that opportunity that I gave everybody else at the end to give your words of final thoughts and words of encouragement. But I do need to reveal that final clue, which, like I said earlier, I don't think anybody's going to get, just because I always try to find somebody that's international, because we are an international network at IBM TV. So I just randomly picked Ecuador. Don't ask me why I picked Ecuador. I just randomly picked Ecuador and tried to find a celebrity from Ecuador. And by the way, that was not easy to do, but I did find somebody and got a couple of clues about them. So here's a couple of the clues. He describes his style of music as Andean techno folklore. So his style of music is Andean techno folklore, and his popularity largely came through, speaking of folks that have popularity from crazy things, from the comical nature of his music. Quishbo's song Tararas Granto, which means Twin Towers, remains the song that has revised or had the most attention from the work that he has done. So he had that song Twin Towers, and it got all kinds of attention. As a matter of fact, it had some crazy figures. As a matter of fact, that'll be one of the other clues, which is that it came out in December 2006 when that song came out, and it was uploaded to YouTube. By January 4th, it had been heard by 250,000 people, and by March 24th, it had over 1 million views. So that was back in 2006 when he uploaded it or had it uploaded to YouTube, and then it just kind of like took off and everything. And then one of the other clues, and I did a little bit of paraphrasing, but it says, while the song is tragic in nature, the subject nature or the subject matter being the singer losing a love in those terrorist attacks that took place in 9/11. The song is also known for being whimsical, kitschy, and for its poor acting. So definitely they were teasing him because they said it was not the best acting that was going on in that film. And he also released another one some 10 years ago, in April of 2010. He released the song In Tus Terras Balar with two Peruvian YouTube stars, and that being Wendy Salka and Tigris del Oriente. The song received all kinds of attention in the Latin American media, and that song has been called a YouTube version of We Are the World. It's by Cali singer Residente. So one of the Latin American singers has called that the YouTube version of We Are the World. I'm guessing because it has people from different cultures and all of that. And then the last clue for this particular individual, and like I said, I was trying to find me somebody that would be interesting from another part of the world, is he is currently the mayor of his hometown, and he has been that mayor since 2010. So that is our final clue person and everything. So David's looking like really puzzled, like I have no idea where Mark even dug this person up from or who this person could be or anything of that nature. So the gentleman's name is Delphin, and I'm going to try to pronounce the last name and everything, but it is Delphin Quishby. Delphin Quishby, and like I said, he is from Ecuador, and he is somewhat of a known singer in that community and everything. And I'll put up a picture of him complete in his Latin American outfit and all of that. But that is the gentleman, Delphin Quishby. So that is our Ecuador mystery guest. So like I said, try to find somebody, and don't ask me why. It's kind of like your writing. Sometimes when I come up with these mystery guests, I know I always want at least one international person and at least one or two. But sometimes it's one international and one U.S. Sometimes it's two international and one U.S. It might be a combination of 2 or 3 people, but I try to have some sort of balance, either 1 in 1 or 2 in 1, leaning one way or the other. But for some reason, last night I was thinking to myself, I want somebody international. Where are they going to come from? And Ecuador popped into my head. Don't ask me why Ecuador popped into my head, but Ecuador popped into my head, and I rode with it.
Did a great job. I never would have guessed the answer. Well, I missed the second answer or second question you had, so I'm not going to get the third. I can tell you that. But no, they're good questions. It's fun.
Yeah, that's kind of what we do. We try to have a little fun with the online dinner party and all of that. So I added that little trivia question element into the show just to add a little different thing, because I do 3 shows on the IBM TV network, and I try to have, I love the interview aspect. That's part of what I've been doing all of my life. My parents started a radio station when I was in a preteen, so I was not even in high school, and I was involved in that for about 10 years or so, through high school, through college, and a little bit into the adult years. So I've always had this media background, but when IBM TV approached me, I was like, I know I want to do these different shows, but they need to have different element. So definitely all of the things will be interviews except for the Gamers Den, which we will not have tomorrow. I think that'll be a rerun. But usually me and my friend Jatovi are talking about the video game world, and it's really his show and everything. But tomorrow is Thanksgiving, so it'll probably be a rerun of some sort. But we will be back next week. And in that one, I get to play the game. So even though I don't play the game physically, I get to narrate the game. So he might be playing a race car game or an adventure game, and I get to use my narration voice to have fun in that. So it gives me a taste of creativity in that. But in terms of the three interview shows, I wanted them each to have a different element. So the online dinner party, I came up with this trivia contest with Mullins Music and Memories, which is the second one that I do on Monday afternoons. I try to have people either give a memory from their past or reflect on their favorite music or something of that nature. But I try to give at least a twist of some sort or another within the context. And by the way, for those that are watching, we do have product. I did mention that earlier to David when he came on and everything, but we do have product. If you go to thebrandonscott.com and you go to IBM TV, which is the third button and everything, you will see that we've got cups, we've got hoodies, we've got t-shirts, and I think we've got an iPhone case. So if you're watching and you're interested and you want to go get some supplies, that's how I partially fund this operation and everything. So I will not cry or argue with you whatsoever. That was called a shameless self-plug, but I definitely had to get that shameless self-plug in there. So if you want to encourage me and get all of this madness going on and all of that, and you want to buy a product, you do get something for it. It's not like you don't get anything for it. So you get a product in the process. So if you want to go over there to the Brandon Scott and go for the IBM TV slots and find out the Mark Lee products, I will gladly appreciate it. So that's for anybody watching, even if you're watching, as my friends Tim and Brian call it, in team replay. In this case, not the game, but in this case, I don't care if you go and do it at a later time and all of that. But that being said, I'm going to turn it over to David. One of the things that I've done with all the guests on the show on a regular basis is I give them a chance to say their final thoughts, any words of encouragement that they would like to share with the audience at hand. And if you would love to do that now, I'm sure that we would love to hear from you. Any words of encouragement, thoughts of positivity, or maybe even what you're going to be doing for your Thanksgiving. Like you said, I just invited myself over to Sands' house, so I do not mind catching a bus and being at your house either. So like I said, just let us know where the dinner is and any words of positivity that you've got going on.
Well, I'm in Austin, Texas, so start driving. It's a long way away.
That's right.
So, no, but I think the thing for me is that, and you would say this in a career, you would say this in an endeavor like I'm doing right now, don't be afraid to be uncomfortable. Be uncomfortable. This is not normal for me. Getting on and speaking, and this is not normal in any way, shape, or form for me. I can double down on that state when it comes to reaching out for philanthropic funding. That's not my skill set. That's not what I'm comfortable doing. But I'm absolutely going to get down that path and doing it because it's a means to an end of what I want to do. I want to make a difference with it. So don't be afraid to be uncomfortable. Definitely pursue your passion, whatever that is. It doesn't matter necessarily what it is. If you feel that strongly about it, then do everything to follow your passion and make it happen for yourself. And I think the other part is, and this is a credit to you, Mark, if there's anything I can do to help anybody, I want people to look me up on LinkedIn and connect with me and share a story that they might have if it relates to dementia or anything. I want that. I want the connectivity and that engagement. You're fantastic about this. And I think just be genuinely humbled by it and appreciative of the fact that I met you, I met Raquel, I met David, I met a number of other people. They're absolutely critical to my own learning. They're going to be critical to the mission I'm trying to get done as well. So I'm just grateful for that.
And that's a great message for you to share with everybody. I am amazed at the fact that you left from one cultural town to another, because you just mentioned that you're in Austin and you did spend some time in the Research Triangle Park. And of course, there's a very active indie music scene here. And I know that there's an active indie music scene in Austin as well. As a matter of fact, there was a time frame where when folks were thinking indie music, they would oftentimes put Austin and the Durham Triangle area almost in the same sentence and everything, because both of those have that very rich indie music community. So I was wondering if you could share a little bit about that as well, because I've just always been amazed about the Austin indie music scene.
Austin's music scene as a whole. I mean, when I moved here and I left Raleigh, so when I moved here was in 1998. I've been here since 1998. But the very first thing I knew was a blues club called Antone's, and anybody, Guy, Stevie Ray Vaughan, anybody that came through that town played at Antone's. So the very first thing I did when I got there was go to Antone's, watch music. And then it was one place, Steamboat, all these different places, the Continental Club. anybody that came to this town would play there. And then you had people that were nobodies that picked up and put their guitar and whatever they were wearing their back. They would show up and they would start busking down on 6th Street or 4th Street or wherever. They would just start busking. And then they became very good. Then they got into the band. And whether it was blues, whether it was folk, whether it was whatever it was, it's just such a part of this town is music. And my wife's brothers, actually, professional musicians, made their whole career doing that. So I think that anywhere you go here, somebody either plays an instrument or tries to. And I'm part of the latter group. I try to play it. I don't do it well. But yeah, this town has so much wonderful talent in music across the board. So you couldn't find a better place. And same thing about RTP as well. So.
Yeah, there's a great music scene here. Like I said, my friend Zach is a funk musician, but another friend of mine is actually, I think they're doing it today because they usually do it on Wednesdays. And even though it's the day before Thanksgiving, I'm pretty sure that Brett is doing his open mic. And I think he's been doing that for well over 20 years. So he's had this open mic that's been going on for a number of years. And they've even had some established artists that have come in and performed, ones when they were already established and some that became established as some of the acts that came out of there. So they've had both ends of the spectrum. They've had some that have been part of like already established and came to perform there. And then they've had some that were not known at all, but they became known through that platform and then have gone on to bigger and better things in terms of their own careers. So definitely it's those kind of platforms, whether it's in Austin, whether it's in the Durham area, whether it's in New York or a number of other places. I think that those kind of platforms are vital.
Yeah, and so I think that one thing, Mark, I would ask, I could give my own shameless plug for 2 seconds on my end of here. So if people are drawn to the Dementia Cause, and I know that I'm one that rather see the book than the film, or they want to see the film and then the book, things like that, I would ask that they reach out. Again, it's less than a cup of coffee. The book is to download an e-copy. So it's on Kindle. It's, you can get the book, but Before the Ashes Fall, I think that it's helpful to understand what the context of the story is, how it is then being adapted for the film to make it more inclusive. That's an important part because I wrote the book from my perspective. I'm not acting from a different perspective. Somebody else has adapted that and they will act in a way that is very different than I can portray. So I think it gives a very full picture of what dementia looks like. They'll see the inspiration behind the story, and I want feedback. If somebody has read it, I would love to have the feedback on what did you like? What did you not like? How did it resonate with you? Did it not work for you? Did it scare you? Did it inspire you? I want to have that feedback as well as a writer because it's helpful for me to pursue different things down the road too.
No doubt, and I definitely will encourage our audience to do that, to reach back to you. I do know that one of the things that they're talking about doing on IBM TV is actually having a book kind of environment. So they will have people come on to this show that will be a book review type show. So that's one of the shows that they're planning for the future and everything. So as that happens, we will definitely pass on your information to them. It might not be me doing the interview or talking about the book, but definitely I will make sure that you are included in that list of authors that they need to have on that show. And I do know that on, I believe it's Tuesdays, Henry Morales, who is part of the filmmaking community out of California, he has a show which is our Celebrity Tuesdays, where they oftentimes talk about independent filmmaking. He's actually part of a group called Rev Shares. So that's definitely another outlet that exists here on the IBM TV family. So I'll definitely be connecting you with them as well. And I know that they do like some shout outs and do some events that they have happening. I think they happen on Wednesdays, if I remember correctly, but they do appear on the IBM TV network just about every Tuesday. So definitely I will connect you to Michelle, to Henry Morales, and a number of other folks. Because actually it's interesting, one of the films that he's very passionate about is dealing with suicide, because that's something that is very impactful to our youth and everything. And he's had some dealings with that. So it's one of his film projects that talks about youth suicide and ways that we can address this other thing that is going on in our society. And we do know that there are a number of youth that are not adapting all that well to some of the things that are happening in society. So that's kind of his passion project. And he's got a couple of other films. I know one of them is called And Hero, but he's got a couple of other ones that deal specifically with the whole issue of suicide and the ways of our youth as they try to cope with this modern world. So he's also about using films as a platform. So definitely I'll make it a point to connect to you, to him, and to some other amazing filmmakers I know here, even in Durham, like my good friend Irvin Truitt, who is a local filmmaker here that has done some things around the issue of homelessness and other kind of issue-oriented things. So there are some great filmmakers that I'm definitely planning to connect you with, either through LinkedIn, through this platform, or through a number of other ways, because that's one of the things I pride myself on, is being kind of a master networker and connecting all of these pieces together so that we can make a better world and all of that. So on that note, I'm going to bring in our airplane, which we use to kind of fly out here, and you get to see the faces of some of our founders, and then I'll hit the in broadcast mark. But right now, we're going to get this plane on out of here.